Hi everyone, welcome back to Potter Paradox. If you want to more magical story, hit the like button and subscribe. Let's get started.
What if a phoenix chose Harry at age 4 and he was raised in Fiendfyre Mountains? Chapter 1. The phoenix's choice. Little Harry Potter huddled in his cupboard, trying to make himself as small as possible. His stomach growled so loudly he pressed his hands against it, afraid Uncle Vernon might hear. 3 days without food, his punishment for making Dudley's toy soldier float. He hadn't meant to do it. Things just happened around him sometimes. A sudden warmth spread through the cupboard. Harry blinked, wondering if fever had finally set in from hunger. The air shimmered, golden light spilling through cracks in the door he'd never noticed before. Then came fire. Harry should have screamed. He should have panicked. But the flames weren't burning him, they danced across his skin like warm bathwater. At the center of this impossible inferno perched the most beautiful bird he'd ever seen. "Are you an angel?" he whispered. The phoenix, because somehow Harry knew that's what it was, tilted its head and trilled a note that felt like laughter and comfort rolled into one. Its feathers glowed crimson and gold, radiating heat that chased away the cupboard's perpetual chill. The bird hopped closer, intelligent eyes studying him. It extended one wing, brushing Harry's cheek where a bruise from Uncle Vernon's backhand was still fresh. A tear fell from the phoenix's eye, landing precisely on the bruise. Instantly, the pain vanished. "You fixed it," Harry breathed. "Thank you." The phoenix trilled again, more insistent this time. It hopped onto Harry's knee, then back to the floor, clearly wanting him to follow. "I can't leave," Harry said. "Uncle Vernon locked the door. And I'll be in even more trouble." The phoenix made a sound like a scoff, then erupted into a pillar of flame that engulfed the cupboard door. When the fire disappeared seconds later, the door hung open, its lock melted into useless metal. Harry gaped. "How did you?" The phoenix interrupted with another musical note and flew into the darkened hallway. Heart pounding, Harry crawled from his cupboard. The house was silent except for Uncle Vernon snoring upstairs. The bird waited by the front door, watching Harry expectantly. "You want me to go with you?" Harry asked, voice barely audible. The phoenix bobbed its head. "But..." Harry glanced up the stairs. The Dursleys were horrible, but they were the only family he had. What if there was nothing better out there? As if reading his thoughts, the phoenix flew back to him, landing on his shoulder. Its weight was surprising, solid and reassuring. It nuzzled against his cheek, and suddenly Harry's mind filled with images, mountains wreathed in golden fire, people in flowing robes performing incredible feats with flames dancing at their fingertips, children laughing as they chased phoenixes through stone corridors. Home. The bird was offering him a home. Harry's eyes stung with tears. "Okay," he whispered. "I'll come." The phoenix took flight, hovering before him. Harry reached out, touching its tail feathers. The world exploded into fire and song. Harry's feet hit solid ground, his knees buckling instantly. His stomach lurched as though he'd been turned inside out, spun around, then reassembled wrong. "Easy there," said a voice. Strong hands caught him before he face-planted. First flame travel's always rough. Harry's vision cleared slowly. A tall man with a salt and pepper beard knelt before him, his eyes amber like fire caught in glass. Behind him stretched a massive cavern illuminated by dancing flames that clung to the walls without fuel or smoke. "Where am I?" Harry managed, his voice small. The man's eyebrows shot up. "Pyralis brought a child. An outsider child." He looked past Harry to where the phoenix had landed atop a stone perch. "I'm Harry," he offered, because Aunt Petunia had at least taught him to introduce himself properly. The man's eyes widened further, flicking to Harry's forehead where his scar peeked through messy hair. "By the eternal flame," he whispered. "Harry Potter." Harry nodded, shrinking back. The man's intensity scared him. "Ignatius." A woman's voice echoed through the cavern. What's happening? The ward's just, she stopped short, staring at Harry. Is that? Paralis brought him, the man, Ignatius, said, still looking shocked. The wards recognized Fiendfyre, but... He turned back to Harry. Child, how did you come to be with Paralis? The bird just appeared in my cupboard, Harry said honestly. Cupboard, the woman repeated, her expression darkening. Where I sleep, Harry explained, not understanding why they both suddenly looked angry. Had he said something wrong already? Ignatius took a deep breath. Harry, I am Master Ignatius, head flame sage of the Phoenix enclave within the Fiendfyre mountains. This is Elder Lyra. He gestured to the woman with long silver-streaked auburn hair. And it seems Paralis has chosen you. Harry glanced at the phoenix, who preened proudly. Chosen me for what? That's what we need to discover, Ignatius said, his tone gentler now. No phoenix has chosen an outsider child in over 3 centuries. Harry's stomach chose that moment to growl ferociously. Lyra's stern face softened slightly. When did you last eat, child? 3 days ago, Harry answered truthfully. The adults exchanged glances loaded with meaning Harry couldn't interpret. Come, Ignatius said, offering his hand. Food first. Questions later. The dining hall put Hogwarts to shame, though Harry had no way of knowing that yet. Unlike the Great Hall's neat rows, this space featured dozens of round tables carved from volcanic stone, each surrounded by cushions instead of chairs. Flames danced in brass bowls at each table's center, somehow cooking food without consuming it. Harry sat cross-legged between Ignatius and Lyra, overwhelmed by the spread before him, flatbreads, stews, fruits he'd never seen before, and some kind of roasted meat that smelled heavenly. Eat slowly, Lyra cautioned when Harry grabbed for the meat. Your stomach will reject it if you rush. Harry forced himself to take small bites, though it nearly killed him. Other diners kept shooting curious glances his way. Why's everyone staring? He whispered. We rarely see new faces here, Ignatius explained. The enclave is hidden from the wizarding world by choice. Wizarding world? Harry repeated, confused. Like, magic? Now it was Ignatius's turn to look confused. You don't know about magic. But you're Harry Potter. What's special about being me? Dead silence fell across the nearby tables. Lyra cleared her throat loudly, and people hurriedly resumed their conversations, though Harry noticed they were still watching from the corners of their eyes. We have much to discuss, Ignatius said quietly. But first, tell me about these relatives who kept you in a cupboard. So Harry told them about the Dursleys. About Dudley's second bedroom while he slept under the stairs. About being called Freak instead of his name. About punishments for things he couldn't explain, like ending up on the school roof or turning his teacher's hair blue. With each word, the flames in the nearby bowls grew higher, responding to Ignatius's barely controlled anger. Albus Dumbledore has much to answer for, Lyra hissed when Harry finished. Dumbledore? Harry asked. Who's that? The man who left you with those people, Ignatius said grimly. Supposedly for your protection. Harry frowned. Protected from what? The adults exchanged another look. Perhaps it's better to show you, Ignatius decided. Come. The Enclave's Hall of Flames reminded Harry of a library, except instead of books, the walls held thousands of crystal orbs containing dancing fires of different colors. Ignatius led him to a section where the orbs glowed emerald green. These are memory flames, Ignatius explained. They preserve our history. He selected an orb and placed it on a stone pedestal. This one contains what the wizarding world knows of your parents last night. The green fire expanded, forming images that played like a movie. Harry watched, transfixed and horrified, as the story unfolded, Lord Voldemort's rise, the prophecy, his parents' murder, and how baby Harry somehow survived the killing curse, destroying Voldemort's body in the process. When it ended, Harry was shaking. My parents were murdered. They didn't die in a car crash. Car crash. Lyra looked outraged again. That's what Aunt Petunia told me. Ignatius knelt before Harry. Your parents were brave wizards who died protecting you. And you, Harry Potter, are famous throughout the wizarding world as the boy who lived. Harry stared at his hands. They looked ordinary, not like hands that had defeated some powerful dark wizard. But I don't remember any of it. You were just a baby, Lyra said, her voice gentler than before. So. I'm a wizard. The word felt strange on his tongue. Yes. Ignatius smiled for the first time. A potentially very powerful one, if Pyralis's interest is any indication. As if summoned, the phoenix appeared in a burst of flame, landing on Harry's shoulder. The bird was heavier than he expected, but its warmth was comforting. He likes me, Harry said, wonderingly. More than likes you, Ignatius corrected. Phoenixes only bond with those they deem worthy. Pyralis has chosen you as his companion, a rare honor. Harry tentatively stroked the bird's feathers. But why me? That's what we need to discover, Ignatius replied. And why you'll stay with us, if you wish. Harry's head snapped up. I can stay here. I don't have to go back to the Dursleys. Never again, Lyra promised fiercely. For the first time in his 4 years of life, Harry felt something unfamiliar bloom in his chest, hope. Albus Dumbledore was enjoying a quiet evening with a new treatise on dragon's blood uses when his office erupted into chaos. Silver instruments whirred and whistled, some emitting puffs of smoke while others spun so rapidly they became blurs. Impossible, he muttered, rising so quickly his chair toppled backward. The protective wards around Privet Drive had collapsed completely. Not triggered, collapsed, as though they'd been overwhelmed by a power that simply didn't recognize their authority. Fawkes gave an agitated trill from his perch. Yes, I'm going immediately, Dumbledore told his phoenix. With a swirl of his wand, he disappeared. He reappeared on Privet Drive to find everything eerily normal. No dark mark, no signs of magical battle. Just ordinary houses with ordinary muggles living ordinary lives. Arabella Figg met him at her door in a bathrobe covered in cat hair. Albus. What brings you here at this hour? The wards on Harry's house have fallen, he explained tersely. Have you noticed anything unusual? Not a thing, she said, looking concerned. Though I haven't seen the boy in several days. Those dreadful people rarely let him outside. Dumbledore's frown deepened. Stay here. I'll check on him directly. At number 4, he cast a subtle sleeping charm to ensure the Dursleys wouldn't wake, then entered silently. The house felt wrong immediately. Magic had been performed here recently, magic unlike any he recognized. He found Vernon and Petunia Dursley snoring in their bedroom, their large son sprawled across a bed surrounded by broken toys. But the cupboard under the stairs, its door hanging open, lock melted clean away, was empty except for a child-sized mattress and a threadbare blanket. Harry Potter was gone. Harry's first week in the enclave passed in a blur of wonders. His small room in the apprentice quarters felt like a palace compared to his cupboard. He had an actual bed with soft blankets, a window overlooking the fiery mountains, and a perch for Pyralis who came and went as he pleased. But not everything was easy. Get out of our way, outsider, sneered a boy several years older than Harry. He stood with 2 friends, blocking Harry's path to the dining hall. I just want breakfast, Harry said quietly. You don't belong here, the boy continued. Phoenixes choose from us, not scrawny little nobodies from the outside. Harry's hands curled into fists, but before he could respond, fire erupted between him and the bullies. Pyralis materialized, wings spread wide, emanating heat that made the older boys step back. Call off your bird, freak, the leader demanded, though his voice shook slightly. The word freak hit Harry like a physical blow. Uncle Vernon's favorite insult. Don't call me that, Harry said, his voice suddenly steady. Ever. Something in his tone made the boys exchange nervous glances. Then footsteps approached, and they scattered. Making friends, I see, Seraphina Flameheart said dryly. At 8 years old, she already carried herself with the confidence of someone much older, her red gold hair braided intricately down her back. Harry shrugged. Not exactly. Ignore Tavian and his idiots, she advised, falling into step beside him. They're just jealous because their families have been trying to attract Phoenix companions for generations without success. And yours? Harry asked curiously. Seraphina lifted her chin. My great-grandmother had a Phoenix companion. First in the family in 12 generations. She gave him a measuring look. You know, you're causing quite the stir. Outsider, famous wizard, and Phoenix chosen all at once. I didn't ask for any of that, Harry muttered. Obviously, she said, rolling her eyes. That's why people are curious. You're a puzzle. In the dining hall, she surprised Harry by sitting beside him instead of with the other apprentices her age. He noticed how conversations dimmed around them, everyone watching. Why are you being nice to me? Harry asked suspiciously. Seraphina smirked. Who says I'm being nice? Maybe I just want to figure you out before everyone else does. Despite her prickly exterior, Seraphina became Harry's first real friend in the enclave. She knew everything about Phoenix lore and didn't mind sharing, though she made Harry work for every bit of knowledge. Phoenixes aren't just pretty birds that burst into flames, she explained during one of their walks through the underground gardens where rare magical plants grew in the heat of controlled flame pits. They're magic incarnate. Pure magical intent given physical form. Like accidental magic? Harry asked, thinking of all the strange occurrences around him at the Dursleys. Sort of, but way more powerful and controlled. She hopped across stepping stones over a stream of what looked like liquid gold. That's why Phoenix companions can eventually do wandless magic more easily. The bond teaches your magic to respond to intent rather than just wand movements or incantations. Harry absorbed this, watching Pyralis fly overhead, occasionally swooping down to check on him. So what does it mean that Pyralis chose me? Seraphina shrugged. Nobody really knows. But legends say Phoenixes only choose those with great destinies, heroes, healers, or protectors. She gave him a sidelong glance. Guess you really are the boy who lived after all. Master Ignatius began Harry's formal training on his 5th birthday. Unlike the other apprentices who trained in groups, Harry worked one-on-one with the head flame sage in a private courtyard high in the mountain complex. The first lesson, Ignatius said, is understanding fire's nature. It's not just destruction, it's transformation, purification, and rebirth. He conjured a flame in his palm without wand or word. Hold out your hand. Harry hesitated. Will it burn me? Only if you fear it, Ignatius said enigmatically. Taking a deep breath, Harry extended his palm. Ignatius tipped his hand, and the flame flowed like water into Harry's waiting palm. For a heartbeat, the fire sat there harmlessly. Then it flared violently upward, forming a pillar that nearly reached the ceiling before collapsing back into Harry's palm and vanishing completely. Ignatius's eyebrows shot up. Interesting. Did I do something wrong? Harry asked anxiously. No. The flame sage studied him intently. Your magic recognized the fire as kin. It's rare in one so young, especially without training. He rubbed his beard thoughtfully. We'll need to approach your lessons differently. Instead of starting with controlling small flames as other apprentices did, Ignatius taught Harry to feel the fire within himself first, to recognize his magical core as a living flame that responded to his emotions and intent. Close your eyes, Ignatius instructed during their 3rd session. Feel the warmth in your center. Not your heart, deeper, behind your navel. Harry concentrated, searching for the sensation his mentor described. At first, nothing happened. Then, remembering how Pyralis's presence always warmed him from the inside out, Harry imagined the phoenix perched on his shoulder. Instantly, he felt it, a flickering heat deep within. "I found it," he exclaimed, eyes flying open. Ignatius smiled. "Well done. Now, can you make it spread? Just to your fingertips first." Harry closed his eyes again, focusing on the internal flame. He imagined it growing, extending tendrils of warmth down his arms to his hands. The sensation tingled pleasantly. "Look," Ignatius said softly. Harry opened his eyes to see his fingertips glowing faintly orange, as though light shone through them from within. "That's brilliant," he breathed. "Indeed. Most apprentices take months to achieve that level of internal control." Ignatius looked both pleased and concerned. "Your magic is exceptionally responsive, Harry. Which means we must be exceptionally careful with your training." "Why?" Harry asked, still marveling at his glowing fingertips. "Because fire answers to emotion as much as will," Ignatius explained. "And you, young Harry, have many powerful emotions just beneath the surface." He wasn't wrong. Harry's first major magical outburst came just 2 months later. Tavian and his friends had graduated from verbal taunts to active sabotage, hiding Harry's belongings, contaminating his food with pepper extract, and once replacing his soap with a potion that turned his skin bright orange for a day. Harry endured it silently, determined not to give them the satisfaction of seeing him upset. But then they targeted Pyralis's perch in Harry's room, coating it with a sticky substance that caught several of the phoenix's tail feathers when he landed, ripping them out painfully. Pyralis's cry of distress shattered something in Harry. He found Tavian and his cronies laughing in the apprentice common area, holding the golden phoenix feathers like trophies. "Give those back," Harry demanded, his small frame vibrating with rage. "Or what, outsider?" Tavian sneered, dangling the feathers mockingly. What happened next became enclave legend. Every flame in the room, candles, lanterns, the large hearth fire, surged toward Harry, swirling around him in a miniature tornado of fire. His eyes blazed with internal light, and when he spoke, his voice echoed as though multiple voices spoke through him. "Those aren't yours to take." The fire shot from Harry to Tavian, encircling him in a ring of flames that didn't burn but trapped him completely. The stolen feathers wrenched themselves from his grip, floating back to Harry, who caught them gently. Then, as suddenly as it had started, all the fire in the room extinguished, plunging everyone into darkness. When the lamps were relit, Harry lay unconscious on the floor, the phoenix feathers clutched protectively to his chest, and Tavian stood frozen in shock, his face ashen. Harry awoke in the enclave's healing chambers, Pyralis perched beside his bed and Master Ignatius sitting nearby. "Welcome back," Ignatius said. That was quite the display of power. Harry struggled to sit up, his body aching as though he'd run miles. "Did I hurt anyone?" "No," Ignatius assured him. "Though you gave everyone quite a fright. Particularly young Tavian, who has been assigned 6 months of cleaning the Phoenix rookery as penance for his actions." Relief flooded through Harry. Then shame. "I lost control." "Yes," Ignatius agreed. "But for a worthy reason. Protecting a bonded phoenix is instinctive and right." He leaned forward. "However, this incident shows why control is so crucial. Your magic responded to your anger instinctively. Imagine if you'd actively wished harm." Harry shuddered at the thought. "The Enclave Council has met," Ignatius continued, his tone more formal. "There is precedent for what occurred. Your magic is developing differently because of your Phoenix bond and your unique history." He paused. "They've voted to formally accept you as my apprentice, the youngest in Enclave history." Harry's eyes widened. "Really?" Ignatius nodded. "It means more intensive training. Stricter rules. Higher expectations. I won't let you down," Harry promised. "I know you won't." The flame sage smiled. "Rest now. We begin tomorrow." As Harry drifted back to sleep, Paralis nuzzled against his cheek, trilling softly. For the first time in his life, Harry fell asleep feeling truly safe, truly wanted, and truly home. Albus Dumbledore had exhausted every magical means of tracking Harry Potter. Blood magic, location charms, even calling in favors from magical beings who specialized in finding the lost, nothing worked. It was as though the boy had simply ceased to exist. "You need to inform the Ministry," Minerva McGonagall insisted during a tense order meeting. "The boy who lived has been missing for 3 months. And cause a panic?" Dumbledore countered. "Imagine the headlines. The chaos. The Death Eaters still at large would redouble their efforts to find him. Better than leaving him who knows where." Minerva shot back. "For all we know, they already have him." "No," Dumbledore said with quiet certainty. "If Death Eaters had Harry, they would want us to know. They would parade their victory." He stroked his beard pensively. "Something else is at work here. Something unexpected." In his office later that night, he turned to Fawkes. "You've been unusually quiet about this matter, old friend. If Harry is in danger, surely you would sense it." The Phoenix tilted his head, regarding Dumbledore with eyes that had witnessed centuries of human folly. Then he trilled a single, clear note that somehow conveyed absolute certainty. Harry Potter was safe. Protected. And exactly where he needed to be. Years passed. Harry grew from the frightened 4-year-old into a confident young apprentice. Under Ignatius's tutelage, he learned not just fire magic but the broader foundations of wizardry he would need to eventually take his place in the wider magical world. The Phoenix bond deepened. Harry and Pyralis developed their own language of sorts, not words, but impressions, emotions, and images they could share through touch. Through Pyralis, Harry learned the Phoenix perception of the world, time as a circular rather than linear flow, magic as visible currents rather than abstract forces. By age 7, Harry could summon and control fire wandlessly, something most adult wizards never mastered. He learned to imbue flames with intent, healing, protection, illumination, or warmth without burning. His friendship with Serafina evolved into a rivalry that pushed them both to excel. 2 years his senior, she refused to let him catch up to her skills, constantly pushing herself to maintain her lead. Their practice duels became spectator events in the enclave, drawing crowds to watch the Phoenix chosen boy and the flame-haired prodigy test their limits. "You're getting better, Potter," she admitted grudgingly after he nearly beat her for the first time, managing to dispel her fire shield with a precisely targeted stream of white-hot flame. Harry grinned, wiping sweat from his forehead. "One day I'll win. Keep dreaming." She flicked her wrist, sending a shower of harmless sparks cascading over him. "I'll always be one step ahead." "Only because you had a head start," he countered. Their banter hid a genuine respect. Serafina was the only person who never treated Harry differently, never awed by his status as the boy who lived or the Phoenix chosen. To her, he was just Harry, the annoying kid who kept trying to steal her spotlight. He wouldn't have it any other way. On Harry's 8th birthday, Master Ignatius took him to a part of the mountain complex he'd never seen before, a natural cave where the stone glowed from internal heat, and pools of molten rock bubbled along the perimeter. "This is the heart of the mountain," Ignatius explained. "The source of our enclave's power. Few are permitted to enter." Harry felt the immense magical energy pulsing around them. "It's amazing. Today marks an important transition in your training," Ignatius said. "You've mastered the basics of fire manipulation. Now you must learn something far more challenging." His expression grew serious. "Control over Fiendfyre." Harry's eyes widened. "But isn't that dark magic?" "I've read about it in the archives. It's supposed to be nearly uncontrollable." "That's the outsider perspective," Ignatius corrected. "Here in the mountains, we understand its true nature. Fiendfyre isn't inherently dark, it's primal. Elemental. It answers only to those with the strength of will to direct it, not control it. He gestured to the cave around them. Our ancestors chose these mountains precisely because they contain natural Fiendfyre reservoirs deep below. Over centuries, they learned to work with it rather than command it. Ignatius held out his hand, and a small serpent of living fire emerged from one of the lava pools, coiling above his palm without burning him. The difference between wizards who succumb to Fiendfyre and those who work with it is understanding, he continued. Fiendfyre isn't a tool, it's a partner. Like your bond with Paralis, it requires respect and harmony. The fire serpent slithered through the air toward Harry, who instinctively held out his hand. The creature circled his wrist, its touch warm but not painful. It likes me, Harry said, surprised. Fiendfyre responds to magical potential, Ignatius explained. And yours is exceptional. The serpent suddenly flowed up Harry's arm to his shoulder, then stretched toward his face. Before Ignatius could intervene, it touched Harry's lightning scar. Pain exploded through Harry's head, white-hot and blinding. He fell to his knees, dimly aware of Ignatius shouting and Paralis appearing in a burst of flame. Through the agony, Harry sensed something foreign within the scar, something dark and corrupt that recoiled from the Fiendfyre's touch. The fire serpent pressed harder, as though trying to burn out an infection. Harry screamed as the two forces battled within him. Then Paralis pressed his head against the scar, adding phoenix fire to the mix. The combined elemental magic surged through Harry's body, seeking out and consuming the darkness. Something black and oily leaked from the scar, vaporizing as it met the air with an unholy shriek. The pain subsided instantly, leaving Harry gasping on the stone floor. Extraordinary, Ignatius breathed, kneeling beside him. Harry, how do you feel? Lighter, Harry answered truthfully. His head felt clearer somehow, as though a fog he hadn't known existed had lifted. What was that? Ignatius's expression was troubled. I'm not certain. But I suspect it relates to your connection to Voldemort. He helped Harry to his feet. Come. We need to consult the council. This changes things. The enclave council convened in their circular chamber, 12 flame sages seated on stone benches arranged in a ring around a central fire pit. Harry stood beside Master Ignatius, still shaky from his experience. The boy carried a soul fragment, Elder Lyra announced after examining Harry thoroughly with ancient diagnostic spells. A horcrux. Gasps and mutters spread through the chamber. Impossible, one sage protested. No one has created a horcrux in centuries. The evidence is clear, Lyra insisted. The combination of Fiendfyre and Phoenix Flame destroyed it, thankfully without harming Harry. But this suggests something dire about Voldemort's supposed defeat. Master Ignatius stepped forward. If Voldemort created at least one horcrux, he cannot truly be dead. His essence remains tethered to the mortal plane. And the prophecy remains in effect, another council member added grimly. Harry cleared his throat nervously. Excuse me, but what exactly is a horcrux? The council members exchanged glances, clearly debating how much to tell him. Finally, Elder Lyra spoke. A horcrux is the darkest of magics, child. It involves splitting one's soul through murder and binding the fragment to an object, or in your unprecedented case, a living being. It's done to achieve a twisted form of immortality. So part of Voldemort was inside me? For all these years? Harry felt sick. Yes, Ignatius said gently. But it's gone now, cleansed by the most purifying magical fires known to wizard kind. Harry touched his scar, which felt different, less sensitive, more like a normal old injury. Does this change what I'm supposed to do? About the prophecy, I mean. It changes everything and nothing, Elder Lyra said cryptically. Your destiny remains, but your path to it shifts. You are free of his direct influence, yet still bound by fate to confront him eventually. But I'm only 8, Harry pointed out. A rare smile crossed Lyra's stern face. Indeed. Which means we have time to prepare you properly. The council voted unanimously to accelerate Harry's training, adding new subjects to his curriculum, advanced defensive magic, magical theory beyond fire manipulation, even political history of both the enclave and the wider wizarding world. You will need every advantage, Ignatius told him as they left the council chamber. For when the time comes to face your destiny, you must be ready. Harry nodded solemnly. The reality of his future felt more concrete now, not just stories about a baby who survived the impossible. I will be. Paralis, who had refused to leave Harry's side since the incident, trilled encouragingly from his shoulder. Through their bond, Harry felt the Phoenix's absolute conviction, they would face whatever came together. News of Harry's horcrux removal spread through the enclave like wildfire. Overnight, the remaining skeptics who had doubted his place among them changed their tune. The Phoenix chosen boy who had survived the killing curse had now also survived carrying a piece of Voldemort's soul. It seemed the stuff of prophecy indeed. Seraphina found him hiding in their favorite spot, a small alcove overlooking the valley below the mountains, where they could see the outside world without leaving the enclave's protection. So, she said, dropping down beside him. You're even more special than we thought. Harry groaned. Not you too. Relax, Potter. She bumped his shoulder with hers. I still think you're an annoying show-off who gets special treatment. Thanks, he said dryly, but her familiar attitude was exactly what he needed. They sat in companionable silence, watching eagles soar over the valley below. Do you ever think about it? Seraphina asked eventually. The outside world. What it would be like to live there. Harry considered the question. Sometimes. I wonder about Hogwarts, what house I'd be in, if I'd be any good at their kind of magic. You'd be Gryffindor for sure, she said dismissively. All that charging headfirst into trouble. Maybe, Harry admitted. What about you? She twirled a strand of fire-red hair around her finger. Slytherin, probably. I'm too ambitious for anything else. You'd rule the place within a week, Harry laughed. Obviously. Her smirk faded. But I don't think I want to go. The enclave is home. Harry nodded. For me too. He paused. But Ignatius says I'll have to go eventually. To fulfill the prophecy. Seraphina's eyes flashed. Well, they can't expect you to do it alone. Her chin lifted in that determined way he recognized well. When the time comes, I'm going with you. You'd leave the enclave? For me? Harry asked, genuinely surprised. Don't get a big head, she warned. Someone needs to keep you from getting yourself killed with your Gryffindor recklessness. But Harry saw through her bravado to the loyalty beneath. For all their rivalry, Seraphina had become the sister he never had. The thought of facing the outside world with her by his side made it seem less daunting. Deal, he said, offering his hand. She took it, and for a moment, their joined hands glowed with shared magical fire, a spontaneous manifestation of their connection. Both quickly pulled away, embarrassed by the display. Race you back. Seraphina suggested, clearly eager to change the subject. Harry grinned. You're on. As Harry's 8th birthday faded into autumn, strange reports began filtering into the enclave. Unexplained fires in nearby Muggle villages. Unusual phoenix behavior, the wild phoenixes that occasionally visited the mountains were agitated, bringing warnings of disturbances in magical currents. Master Ignatius grew increasingly preoccupied, often called away for emergency council meetings. When present for Harry's lessons, his mind seemed elsewhere. Is something wrong? Harry finally asked after a particularly distracted training session. Ignatius sighed heavily. Perhaps. There have been incidents. Fires that bear the signature of enclave magic, yet none of our people claim responsibility. Could it be accidental? Harry suggested. Someone's magic getting away from them? No, Ignatius said firmly. These fires show intentional control, precise targeting. And they're growing closer to the mountain. Paralis, who had been dozing nearby, suddenly raised his head, feathers bristling. A moment later, alarms echoed through the enclave, a sound Harry had never heard before. Ignatius stiffened. Perimeter breach. Someone's penetrated the outer wards. They rushed from the training room to find the main cavern in controlled chaos, enclave members moving purposefully to defensive positions while apprentices were herded toward interior chambers. Elder Lyra appeared, her usually immaculate robes singed at the edges. Ignatius, they've found the eastern tunnel. 3 ministry officials and. Her eyes flicked to Harry, Albus Dumbledore. Harry's stomach dropped at the name. The man who'd left him with the Dursleys. The wizard everyone called the most powerful of the age. How did they find us? Ignatius demanded. They tracked the fires, Lyra replied grimly. Someone has been deliberately leaving magical traces to lead them here. Harry felt Paralis's alarm through their bond. The phoenix launched from his perch, circling anxiously. What do we do? Harry asked. Ignatius's face hardened with resolve. We meet them. On our terms. He placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. You should stay here. No, Harry said firmly. If Dumbledore's here for me, I want to face him myself. Pride flickered across Ignatius's features. Very well. But stay close to me. The eastern tunnel opened onto a narrow mountain pass where natural stone archways formed a defensible position. A dozen flame sages had already taken up positions there, fire dancing at their fingertips. And approaching through the pass were 4 figures, 3 in standard ministry robes and 1 tall, imposing wizard with a long silver beard and half-moon spectacles, wearing robes of deep purple spangled with stars. Harry's first thought was that Dumbledore looked exactly like his chocolate frog card. Ignatius stepped forward, Harry slightly behind him with Paralis on his shoulder. You trespass on sovereign magical territory, Albus Dumbledore. I seek only to speak with you, Master Ignatius, Dumbledore replied, his voice calm and reasonable. And to confirm the safety of a child placed under my protection. His blue eyes found Harry, widening slightly at the sight of the phoenix. Harry, he said softly. You've grown. Harry lifted his chin, feeling Paralis's reassuring weight and Ignatius's steady presence beside him. I'm safe, as you can see. Safer than I ever was with the Dursleys. Something like pain crossed Dumbledore's face. I see I have much to answer for. Yes, Harry agreed simply. You do. Master Ignatius stepped forward. This discussion needn't happen in a mountain pass. Come inside, Albus. You and your colleagues. The way he said the last word made it clear what he thought of the ministry officials. We accept your hospitality, Dumbledore said with a slight bow. And I assure you, we come in peace. As they turned to enter the tunnel, Harry noticed Paralis watching Dumbledore intently, head tilted as though puzzling something out. Through their bond came not fear or anger, but curiosity. What is it? Harry whispered to his companion. Paralis sent him an image, Dumbledore with his own phoenix, conversing like old friends. Fawkes, Harry murmured, remembering the name from his studies. You know him? The phoenix trilled affirmatively. Somehow, that made Harry feel marginally better about the coming confrontation. If Dumbledore was worthy of a phoenix's companionship, perhaps he deserved at least a chance to explain himself. But Harry wouldn't be returning to the Dursleys. On that point, he was absolutely resolved. No matter what. The meeting took place in the council chamber, its circular design putting everyone on equal footing. Harry sat between Ignatius and Lyra, Paralis perched protectively on the back of his seat. Dumbledore and his ministry companion sat opposite, with the central fire pit between them. For years, Elder Lyra began without preamble. For years we've provided Harry Potter with the home, protection, and training you failed to secure for him, Albus Dumbledore. What gives you the right to appear now? The accusation hung in the fire-warmed air. The ministry officials shifted uncomfortably, but Dumbledore remained composed. I have no right, he admitted, surprising everyone. Only responsibility. A responsibility I clearly mishandled when I placed Harry with his relatives. His piercing blue eyes found Harry's. I owe you an explanation, Harry, though not an excuse. I'm listening, Harry said, more calmly than he felt. When your parents were killed and you survived Voldemort's attack, you were left with a protection. Your mother's sacrifice created blood magic of the most ancient kind. Dumbledore's voice was gentle but didn't talk down to him. I believed, and still believe, that this protection could be maintained through your blood connection to Petunia Dursley, keeping you safe from Voldemort's followers while you grew up away from the fame and pressure of being the boy who lived. So you left me with people who hated me, Harry summarized flatly. Who kept me in a cupboard and called me freak instead of my name. Dumbledore closed his eyes briefly, genuine pain crossing his features. I knew they were reluctant to take you in. I did not know the extent of their mistreatment. For that, I am truly sorry, Harry. How could you not know? Ignatius demanded. You, the great Albus Dumbledore, chief warlock and supreme mugwump, failed to check on an orphan child's welfare for 4 years? I had monitoring charms, Dumbledore defended, though he looked increasingly uncomfortable. They showed Harry was alive and healthy. I believed that was sufficient. Clearly not, Lyra said coldly. One of the ministry officials, a square-jawed witch with short grey hair, cleared her throat. The ministry's position is that Mr. Potter must return to Wizarding Society proper. The boy who lived cannot remain hidden away in an unregistered magical community. Fire flared higher in the central pit, reflecting the anger that surged through the enclave members. Unregistered? Ignatius repeated dangerously. The Phoenix Enclave predates your ministry by 6 centuries, Madam Bones. We have no need of your registration. Nevertheless, the witch continued firmly, there are laws about magical guardianship of orphaned wizarding children, especially those of Mr. Potter's significance. Harry felt panic building. They wanted to take him away, back to the Dursleys or some other place where he didn't belong. Paralis sensed his distress and trilled soothingly, sending calming warmth through their bond. I'm not going anywhere, Harry stated, standing up. The flames in the pit danced higher, responding to his emotion. The Enclave is my home. Master Ignatius is my guardian. Paralis chose me. He fixed Dumbledore with a determined stare. You left me with people who hated magic. Who tried to beat it out of me. You don't get to decide where I belong now. A heavy silence fell. Then, unexpectedly, Dumbledore smiled slightly. Well said, Harry. He turned to his companions. I believe we must reconsider our approach. Madam Bones looked scandalized. Albus, you can't seriously suggest, I suggest, Dumbledore interrupted gently, that we acknowledge reality. Harry has found a home where he is clearly safe, well cared for, and receiving magical education appropriate to his considerable talents. He gestured toward Paralis. And he has been chosen by a phoenix, a blessing even I recognize the significance of. He steepled his fingers. Perhaps a compromise is possible. Hours later, after intense negotiation, an unprecedented agreement was reached. Harry would remain at the Enclave as Master Ignatius's official apprentice and ward. The Phoenix Enclave would be officially recognized by the Ministry as a sovereign magical territory, though most of its location and practices would remain secret. And when Harry turned 11, he would attend Hogwarts while maintaining his connection to the Enclave. You'll have dual citizenship, in essence, Ignatius explained to Harry afterward. A foot in both worlds. Harry frowned. Do I have to go to Hogwarts? I'm happy here. The prophecy, Harry, Ignatius reminded him gently. Your destiny lies in the wider wizarding world, at least in part. Hogwarts will give you connections, knowledge, and experiences the enclave cannot. And I'll be able to come back. During holidays? Of course, Ignatius assured him. This will always be your home. Before Dumbledore and his party departed, the headmaster requested a private word with Harry. I want to give you something, Dumbledore said, pulling a shimmering silvery fabric from his robes. This belonged to your father. He left it in my possession before he died, and I think it's time it was returned to you. Harry accepted the strange cloth, gasping as it slipped through his fingers like liquid silver. An invisibility cloak, he whispered, recognizing it from his studies. Indeed, and quite an extraordinary one, Dumbledore confirmed. Your father used it for, well, let's call them, adventures, during his school days. Harry ran his hands over the cloak, feeling an unexpected connection to the father he couldn't remember. Thank you, he said sincerely. Dumbledore nodded, then hesitated. May I ask you something, Harry? What? Are you truly happy here? Harry didn't hesitate. Yes. Happier than I've ever been. Relief softened the old wizard's features. Then I am grateful to the phoenix that brought you here, even if it meant 4 years of my frantic searching. His eyes twinkled suddenly. Though I suspect Fawkes knew where you were all along. Phoenixes do keep each other's secrets. As if summoned by his name, Dumbledore's phoenix appeared in a flash of flame, landing beside Pyralis. The two magical birds exchanged a series of musical notes that sounded remarkably like conversation. What are they saying? Dumbledore asked curiously. Harry concentrated on the impressions flowing through his bond. Pyralis is telling Fawkes that he chose well too. He looked up at Dumbledore. He means you. Something like humility crossed Dumbledore's face. I try to be worthy of that choice, just as I'm sure you do. For the first time, Harry saw beyond the image of the manipulative old wizard who'd abandoned him to the Dursleys. He glimpsed someone more complex, a man who had made mistakes but was willing to acknowledge them, who carried burdens Harry couldn't yet understand. I'll see you at Hogwarts, then, Harry said, offering his hand. Dumbledore shook it solemnly. I look forward to it, Harry. I believe you'll surprise us all. After the ministry delegation departed, life in the enclave gradually returned to normal, though with subtle changes. Security increased, with additional wards layered over the mountain passages. Harry's training intensified further, with more emphasis on magics he might encounter at Hogwarts. But the biggest change came when Master Ignatius called Harry and Seraphina to his private study one evening. We have a situation, he said without preamble. The fires that led Dumbledore to us have continued, moving further into Muggle areas. The council has identified the magical signature. His expression darkened. It's Kieran Blackthornne. Seraphina gasped. But he was banished. Who's Kieran Blackthornne? Harry asked, puzzled. Ignatius and Seraphina exchanged glances. He was my father's apprentice, Seraphina explained, her voice tight. A prodigy with fire magic, especially Fiendfyre. But he became obsessed with power, experimenting with darker applications. He killed 3 apprentices in a ritual gone wrong, Ignatius continued grimly. The council stripped him of his position and banished him from the mountains forever, his magic bound so he could never again access Fiendfyre. But he's using fire magic now? Harry asked. Yes, which means he's broken the binding somehow. Ignatius looked troubled. And based on the pattern of fires, he's searching for something, or someone. Harry felt a chill despite the room's warmth. You think he's looking for me? Because of the prophecy? Possibly, Ignatius admitted. Or he may seek revenge against the enclave generally. Either way, we must be vigilant. He fixed both children with a stern look. Neither of you is to leave the mountain's protection until we locate and deal with Blackthornne. Is that understood? Yes, Master Ignatius, they chorused. As they left his study, Seraphina looked uncharacteristically shaken. What aren't you telling me? Harry asked quietly. She glanced around to ensure they were alone. Kieran was more than my father's apprentice. He was supposed to be my betrothed. What? Harry stared at her. But you'd have been, for when the arrangement was made, she finished. It's an old enclave tradition with powerful magical families. We weren't to be married until I came of age, of course, but... She shuddered. After what he did, my father broke the contract. Kieran always blamed our family for his fall from grace. Harry's protective instincts flared. He won't get near you, Sarah. I promise. She raised an eyebrow at the nickname but didn't correct him. Instead, she straightened her shoulders, her usual confidence returning. I don't need your protection, Potter. I can handle myself. I know, Harry assured her. But you don't have to handle everything alone. That's what friends are for. For once, Serafina didn't have a witty comeback. She simply nodded, a small smile playing at the corner of her lips. Neither of them could know that Kieran Blackthornne was much closer than the Enclave realized, or that his plans involved both of them in ways they couldn't imagine. The Phoenix had chosen Harry at age 4, bringing him to the Fiendfyre Mountains where he found a home, a purpose, and a power unlike any the wizarding world had seen before. But his greatest challenges were just beginning. Chapter 2, Trials by Fire, Again. Master Ignatius commanded, watching Harry intently from across the training chamber. Harry wiped sweat from his brow, breathing hard. He'd been at this for hours, calling and dismissing Fiendfyre in controlled bursts, directing it through an obstacle course of magical targets. Even after 4 years of training, the ancient fire magic tested his limits. Paralis watched from a high perch, occasionally trilling encouragement when Harry's concentration wavered. I need a break, Harry muttered, his arms trembling with exhaustion. Voldemort won't offer breaks, Ignatius replied sharply. Kieran Blackthornne certainly won't. Again. Harry gritted his teeth, summoning his remaining energy. He thrust his hands forward, calling forth his inner flame. Fire erupted from his palms, not regular fire but living fiendfire that took the form of a serpent, its body sinuous and gleaming as it cut through the air. Control, Ignatius reminded him. Intent shapes the fire. Narrowing his eyes, Harry directed the fire serpent through a series of hovering rings. It slithered precisely through each target, never touching the edges, growing neither too large nor too small. When it reached the final ring, Harry made it double back, coiling protectively around him before dismissing it with a thought. Ignatius nodded, satisfaction evident despite his stern expression. Better. Your endurance is improving. Harry slumped against the stone wall, completely spent. It doesn't feel like it. Yet 4 years ago, you couldn't even light a candle without setting the entire room ablaze, his mentor reminded him, a rare smile softening his features. Progress isn't always noticeable day by day, but over time. He gestured to the scorch marks on the ceiling from Harry's early training attempts. Paralis swooped down, landing on Harry's shoulder and nuzzling his cheek. The Phoenix's presence instantly soothed his fatigue, warmth flowing through their bond. Thanks, Harry murmured, stroking the brilliant feathers. At 8 years old, he stood taller than most children his age, his body hardened by physical training that complemented his magical education. The scrawny, underfed boy from Privet Drive was long gone, replaced by a confident young mage with piercing green eyes that occasionally flickered with inner fire when his emotions ran high. Ignatius checked the time. The flame trials begin tomorrow. You should rest. Harry perked up immediately. The annual competition was the highlight of the Enclave's calendar, a 3-day event where apprentices demonstrated their skills before the entire community. This would be his first year competing in the junior division. Do you think I'm ready? He asked. That remains to be seen, Ignatius said cryptically. But I believe you'll surprise many who still underestimate you. Translation: Ignatius expected him to win but wouldn't say it outright. Harry grinned. Get some sleep, his mentor added, extinguishing the training room's flames with a casual wave. Tomorrow will test not just your skill but your judgment. Harry found Seraphina in the apprentice common area, surrounded by her usual admirers. At 10, she'd grown into her reputation as the enclave's most promising student, her fire-red hair now reaching her waist when not braided for training. Potter, she acknowledged as he approached. Finally escaped Ignatius's torture chamber. Barely, Harry confirmed, dropping onto a cushion across from her. He's determined to work me to death before the trials. Smart man, she smirked. It's the only way I won't completely humiliate you tomorrow. The other apprentices chuckled. Despite Harry's growing abilities, many still viewed him as an outsider who'd lucked into Ignatius's favor through his Phoenix bond rather than earned it. We'll see, Harry replied evenly. After 4 years, he'd learned to let their skepticism fuel rather than discourage him. You're competing in different divisions anyway, Kieran, another apprentice, pointed out. Sarah's in intermediates this year. Seraphina stretched lazily, like a cat showing off its claws. True. But everyone knows the real competition is for highest overall score, regardless of division. Her amber eyes locked with Harry's green ones, the challenge clear. This wasn't just about winning their respective divisions, it was about which of them would impress the enclave most. May the best fire mage win, Harry said with a slight bow of his head. Seraphina's lip curled into a half-smile. I intend to. As the other apprentices drifted away for evening meal, Seraphina leaned closer to Harry, her voice dropping. Has Ignatius told you about the special guest judges this year? Harry frowned. No. Who? Ministry officials, she whispered. And rumor has it, Dumbledore himself. Harry's stomach tightened. He hadn't seen the Hogwarts headmaster since their meeting 4 years ago, though they'd exchanged occasional letters. Why would they judge our internal competition? Politics, Seraphina said with distaste. Ever since the ministry officially recognized us, they've been pushing for more involvement. My father says they're especially interested in you. Great, Harry muttered. The last thing he wanted was more scrutiny from the outside world. So no pressure, right? Seraphina punched his arm lightly. Just don't embarrass us, Potter. Show them why the enclave doesn't need their approval. Behind her bravado, Harry detected genuine concern. The flame trials weren't just a competition this year, they were a statement about the enclave's sovereignty. I won't let you down, he promised. Her expression softened momentarily before she caught herself. As if I care. Just don't set yourself on fire. She stood abruptly. I need to practice my phoenix flight formation. As she walked away, Paralis trilled knowingly from Harry's shoulder. Shut up, Harry told his feathered friend. She's just worried about the competition. The phoenix made a sound suspiciously like laughter. The flame arena occupied the largest cavern in the enclave, its ceiling opening to the sky through a natural chimney that vented heat and smoke. Rows of stone seats surrounded a circular platform where massive fire pits marked the competition zones. For the trials, the entire space had been decorated with banners representing the 4 elemental aspects of fire: creation, destruction, purification, and transformation. Harry stood with the other junior competitors, trying to calm his nerves. Across the arena, the intermediate division gathered, Seraphina's distinctive hair gleaming like a banner among them. The senior division, apprentices in their final years of training, occupied the northern section, looking imposingly confident. Master Ignatius approached, his ceremonial robes reflecting the flames around them. Remember your training, he said quietly. Fire responds to emotion, but it obeys discipline. Find the balance. Harry nodded, grateful for the reminder. Paralis couldn't accompany him during the trials, each competitor faced the challenges alone, but the phoenix watched from a high perch, a spot of brilliant color among the darker flames. A hush fell as the Council of Flame Sages entered, 12 masters in formal regalia taking their seats on the highest tier. Behind them came the guests, 3 ministry officials in their formal robes, and Albus Dumbledore, instantly recognizable with his silver beard and twinkling blue eyes. Harry's stomach lurched when Dumbledore spotted him and offered a small nod of acknowledgement. Elder Lyra stepped forward, raising her hands. For 3 centuries, the Phoenix Enclave has tested its apprentices in the sacred flame trials, honoring our traditions and preparing our youth for the responsibilities of fire magic. Her voice carried easily through the cavern. Today, we welcome guests who witness our ways for the first time. May they see the wisdom in our methods. The last sentence carried a subtle edge that wasn't lost on anyone present. Apprentices, approach your starting positions, Lyra commanded. The trials begin. Harry took his place at the edge of the junior arena. The first trial always tested basic control, manipulating fire through a series of increasingly difficult patterns. Easy enough in practice, but with hundreds watching and his nerves jangling, Harry worried his concentration might slip. A gong sounded. Harry centered himself, calling forth his inner flame just as Ignatius had taught him. Fire sprang to life in his palms, ordinary flame for this first trial, not the more dangerous Fiendfyre. The patterns appeared in the air above, simple circles at first, then complex spirals, runes, and finally 3-dimensional shapes that required precise manipulation in multiple directions. Harry moved fluidly, directing his flames through each pattern without hesitation. Years of Ignatius's relentless drills had burned these movements into muscle memory. He completed the sequence flawlessly, finishing several seconds before any other junior apprentice. Scattered applause broke out, quickly hushed by the judges who remained impassive. But Harry caught Dumbledore leaning forward, his expression intrigued. The second trial tested adaptive control, responding to unpredictable changes. Flames of various colors erupted from the floor in random patterns. Competitors had to absorb and redirect each flame without breaking their stance or allowing the fires to touch anything but their hands. Again, Harry's training served him well. Ignatius had often ambushed him with surprise fire drills, sometimes waking him in the middle of the night to test his reflexes. Harry moved instinctively, his body pivoting and flowing as he caught each flame and sent it spiraling into the designated containment vessels. By the third trial, a test of endurance where apprentices maintained a shield of flame while magical attacks bombarded them, Harry had forgotten his nerves. He fell into the rhythm of the competition, his world narrowing to fire and focus. When the final gong sounded, he emerged from his concentration to find the junior arena empty except for himself and one other competitor. All others had been eliminated during the trials. The junior division final match, Elder Lyra announced. Harry Potter and Elian Emberforge. Elian, a stocky boy a year older than Harry, gave him a respectful nod. They'd trained together occasionally, and Harry knew him to be both skilled and fair, a worthy opponent. Combatants will demonstrate controlled offensive and defensive fire magic, Lyra explained. First to force their opponent from the circle or render them unable to continue advances to the champions round. Harry and Elian bowed to each other, then took their starting positions. The arena fell silent, tension thick in the heated air. The gong sounded a final time. Elian struck first, sending a volley of fireballs streaking toward Harry in a wide pattern designed to limit his movement options. A solid opening move. Harry didn't dodge. Instead, he clapped his hands together, creating a vertical wall of flame that absorbed Elian's attack completely. Before the wall dissipated, Harry separated his hands, splitting the fire into twin serpents that slithered rapidly across the arena floor toward Elian's feet. Clever, but predictable. Elian leapt upward, summoning a platform of solidified flame to stand upon, a difficult technique requiring precise control to avoid burning oneself. Harry had expected this. The moment Elian was airborne, Harry dismissed one serpent and poured his power into the other, causing it to rear up and expand into a massive fiery hand that closed around Elian's platform. Surprise flashed across Elian's face. He abandoned his perch just as Harry's fire hand crushed it, sending a retaliatory stream of white-hot flame directly at Harry's chest. Harry spun sideways, the heat singing his robes as he narrowly avoided being hit. He countered with a rapid series of fire rings that homed in on Elian from multiple angles. Back and forth they went, fire against fire, neither gaining a decisive advantage. Harry felt his reserves depleting, maintaining such precise control for so long after the previous trials taxed even his enhanced endurance. Time for something unexpected. Harry took a calculated risk, dropping his defensive shield entirely and channeling all his remaining energy into the arena floor beneath Elian's feet. The stone superheated instantly, forcing Elian to jump or be burned. The moment Elian was airborne and vulnerable, Harry sent a concentrated burst of flame that caught him mid-leap, pushing him backward and out of the competition circle. Match concluded. Elder Lyra announced. Junior Division Champion, Harry Potter. Applause erupted, more enthusiastic than before. Harry helped Elian to his feet, both boys breathing hard. Well fought, Elian said sincerely. Never saw that floor move coming. You almost had me with that platform technique, Harry admitted. They clasped forearms in the traditional enclave gesture of respect between duelists. As they separated, Harry's eyes sought out Seraphina in the crowd. She offered the smallest of approving nods before turning away to prepare for her own final match. Harry barely had time to catch his breath before the intermediate division finals began. Seraphina faced Tyrion, a third-year apprentice with a reputation for aggressive tactics. Their match made Harry's look tame by comparison, with both competitors using advanced techniques that bent the rules to their limits. When Seraphina emerged victorious, her opponent trapped in a cage of frozen fire that required judges' intervention to dispel, her score exceeded Harry's by a mere 2 points. Their eyes met across the arena, mutual respect tinged with renewed competitive fire. The senior division champion, a 7th-year named Kieran, outscored them both handily with a display of Fiendfyre control that had even the council members applauding. The champions of each division will now demonstrate their signature technique, Elder Lyra announced when all 3 divisions had concluded. This final display determines the overall trials champion. Harry swallowed hard. This was the part he'd been both anticipating and dreading. Each competitor performed their most impressive skill, something unique that showcased their individual talents and training. As the youngest champion in recent memory, expectations for Harry ran particularly high. Kieran went first, conjuring a phoenix entirely from Fiendfyre that flew complex patterns before dissolving into a shower of harmless sparks. The crowd roared its approval. Seraphina followed with her specialty, simultaneously controlling flames of 7 different magical types, each burning at different temperatures and colors, weaving them into a complex double helix that rotated above the arena. Her precision and multitasking ability drew gasps of appreciation. Then it was Harry's turn. He walked to the center of the arena, acutely aware of hundreds of eyes upon him, including Dumbledore's penetrating gaze. Paralis trilled encouragingly from above, sending warmth through their bond. Harry closed his eyes, centering himself. What he planned to do was risky, something he and Ignatius had developed in secret, combining Harry's unique connection to Phoenix magic with traditional enclave techniques. He raised his hands slowly, palms upward. From each palm sprouted ordinary fire that gradually shifted, becoming the distinctive living flame of Fiendfyre. So far, nothing spectacular. Many advanced apprentices could manage dual-handed Fiendfyre. The murmurs began when Harry brought his hands together, merging the 2 serpentine flames into a swirling vortex before him. Controlling merged Fiendfyre required exceptional focus, any slip would result in the destructive fire escaping his command. But Harry wasn't finished. Taking a deep breath, he opened himself fully to his bond with Paralis, drawing on their shared magical essence. The phoenix responded, diving from its perch and circling above Harry, trailing golden fire. As Paralis completed the 3rd circle, Harry thrust his hands upward. The Fiendfyre vortex shot toward the ceiling, expanding outward. At precisely the right moment, Paralis swooped through it, infusing the destructive fire with phoenix magic. The transformation was immediate and stunning. The Fiendfyre shifted from its typical predatory forms to a perfect replica of Hogwarts Castle, rendered in living flame so detailed that individual towers and windows were visible. The fiery structure rotated slowly above the arena, Phoenix Flame and Fiendfyre working in harmony rather than opposition, something many had deemed impossible. Harry held the display for exactly 60 seconds, the maximum allowed, before gradually dissipating the flames with a controlled exhale. As the last ember faded, silence held the arena spellbound. Then Dumbledore stood, beginning a slow, deliberate applause that quickly spread until the entire cavern thundered with it. Even the council members looked impressed, and Ignatius's expression practically glowed with pride. Elder Lyra raised her hands for silence. The council will now deliberate the overall champion. Harry rejoined the other champions, his legs shaky from magical exertion. "Show off," Seraphina whispered, but her eyes shone with something like admiration. "Says the witch who controlled 7 different fire types at once," Harry countered. Kieran, the senior champion, studied Harry with newfound respect. That Phoenix integration was remarkable. "I've never seen Fiendfyre respond that way." Before Harry could respond, Elder Lyra returned to the center of the arena. "After careful consideration, the council has determined this year's overall Flame Trials champion." She paused dramatically. "For unprecedented magical innovation and flawless execution, the champion is Harry Potter." The eruption of cheers surprised Harry. Despite his years in the enclave, part of him still expected rejection as an outsider. Instead, his achievement had been recognized on its own merit. As he stepped forward to receive the champion's flame, a perpetually burning crystal that would remain lit for the year until the next trials, Harry caught Dumbledore watching him with an expression mixing pride, concern, and something else Harry couldn't quite identify. Whatever the headmaster might be thinking, one thing was clear: Harry Potter was no longer just the boy who lived or the Phoenix chosen outsider. He had earned his place among the fire mages of the enclave through his own skill and determination. And that, more than any trophy, was what he'd been working for all these years. The celebration following the trials lasted well into the night. Apprentices and masters alike gathered in the main hall for a feast, with special foods prepared to honor the champions. As overall winner, Harry received the traditional privilege of lighting the great hearth from his own inner flame, a task he performed with appropriate solemnity despite his excitement. "You've done the impossible," Ignatius told him during a quiet moment. "No junior apprentice has ever taken the overall championship. And certainly never with Phoenix integrated Fiendfyre." "I had a good teacher," Harry replied, grinning. Ignatius inclined his head in acknowledgement. "True, but the talent is yours. As is the target you've now placed on your back, every apprentice in the enclave will be determined to surpass you next year." "Let them try," Harry said with the confidence of youth. His mentor's expression sobered. Our guests were quite impressed. Particularly Dumbledore. Harry glanced toward the high table where the Hogwarts headmaster conversed with Elder Lyra. "Is that good or bad?" "Both, perhaps," Ignatius admitted. "Recognition of your abilities strengthens your position and, by extension, the enclave's. But it also accelerates certain timelines." "You mean Hogwarts," Harry guessed. "And eventually, Voldemort." Ignatius nodded. "Dumbledore has requested a meeting with you tomorrow. I suggest you prepare yourself for difficult questions." Before Harry could respond, Seraphina appeared at his elbow, flushed with excitement despite her second-place finish. "Come on, champion," she said, grabbing his arm. "The senior apprentices are telling stories about past trials disasters." Kieran set his own eyebrows on fire during his first competition. Harry allowed himself to be pulled away, grateful for the interruption. Tomorrow would bring serious matters, tonight was for celebration. Harry found Dumbledore waiting in the enclave's small garden courtyard, a rare space where plants rather than fire dominated. The headmaster stood examining a strange flower that thrived in the heat radiating from nearby vents, his expression one of scholarly interest. "Ignis Orchideus," he remarked as Harry approached. Fascinating adaptation, it converts thermal energy directly into magical sustenance. I've only seen illustrations before. They bloom once a year, Harry said. The petals are used in healing potions for burn victims. Dumbledore smiled. Your education here is comprehensive indeed. He gestured to a stone bench. Shall we sit? My old bones appreciate rest after standing through yesterday's impressive competition. Harry sat, keeping a respectful distance. Paralis appeared in a flash of flame, settling on Harry's shoulder with a suspicious look at the headmaster. Your phoenix seems protective, Dumbledore observed. Paralis remembers everything, Harry said simply. Including the Dursleys. Dumbledore's expression fell. Ah. Yes, that remains between us, doesn't it? A grievous error in judgment on my part. Why did you want to see me? Harry asked, not interested in rehashing old wounds. Direct as always, Dumbledore's eyes twinkled briefly. Very well. I wanted to discuss your future, Harry. Specifically, your education at Hogwarts, which will commence in just under 3 years' time. I know the agreement, Harry said. I'll attend Hogwarts while maintaining my enclave training during holidays. Indeed. But yesterday's display highlighted certain complexities. Dumbledore steepled his fingers. Your magical development is extraordinary, Harry. You're already performing magic beyond OWL level in certain areas, particularly those involving fire elementalism. Harry shrugged. It's what I've been trained for. Precisely. And therein lies our challenge. Dumbledore leaned forward. Hogwarts' curriculum isn't structured for students with such specialized pre-education. You'll be simultaneously ahead of your peers in practical power and control, while behind in the broad theoretical foundations we typically establish first. So I'll adjust, Harry said. Learn what I need to. Of course you will, Dumbledore agreed. But there are other considerations. Your status as both the boy who lived and a trained fire mage will create unique social dynamics. And then there's the matter of your phoenix. Harry frowned. What about Paralis? Hogwarts hasn't hosted a student with a phoenix companion in over 4 centuries, Dumbledore explained. Accommodations will need to be made. Beyond that, the nature of your bond, particularly as demonstrated yesterday, raises questions about your magical classification within ministry guidelines. Classification? Harry repeated, not liking the sound of that. The ministry categorizes magical beings and individuals with unique abilities for regulatory purposes, Dumbledore said carefully. Your integration of Phoenix magic with human wizardry places you in something of a gray area. Harry's eyes narrowed. You mean they want to study me? Classify me as something other than a normal wizard? Some officials have expressed interest, yes. Dumbledore didn't deny it. Your performance yesterday only heightened that interest. I'm not a research subject, Harry said firmly. No, you are not, Dumbledore agreed. Which is why I've proposed an alternative. Special independent study at Hogwarts, overseen jointly by myself and Master Ignatius, focused on integrating your enclave training with traditional wizardry while documenting your progress in a controlled, protected environment. Harry considered this. So instead of being the ministry's lab rat, I'd be yours and Ignatius's? A smile tugged at Dumbledore's beard. A rather blunt assessment, but not entirely inaccurate. The difference being that both Ignatius and I have your best interests at heart, while the ministry is primarily concerned with classification and potential regulation. Put that way, the choice seemed obvious. Does Ignatius approve this plan? We discussed it at length last night, Dumbledore confirmed. He sees the wisdom in structured documentation under friendly supervision versus potential ministry interference later. Harry nodded slowly. Then I'll do it. But I have conditions. I expected nothing less, Dumbledore said, looking amused. Paralis comes with me everywhere, no restrictions on his movement in the castle. I continue all aspects of my enclave training, including Fiendfyre work in a safe location. And I want Seraphina to have the option of the same arrangement when she's ready for Hogwarts. Dumbledore raised an eyebrow. Miss Flameheart is important to you. She's my friend, Harry said simply. And she'd curse me 6 ways to Sunday if I got special treatment she didn't. That earned a genuine laugh. Very well, Harry. Your conditions are reasonable and accepted. He extended his hand. Do we have an agreement? Harry hesitated only briefly before shaking it. Agreement. Excellent. Dumbledore stood. Now, I believe you have a champion's feast to enjoy, and I have arrangements to make with the ministry before our departure tomorrow. As the headmaster turned to leave, Harry called after him. Professor. The prophecy, will I learn about it at Hogwarts? Dumbledore paused. The full prophecy remains secured where only those directly concerned can access it. But yes, Harry, as you approach the age of responsibility, you will learn everything I know about your destined confrontation with Voldemort. He's not really gone, is he? Harry asked quietly. Even with the horcrux removed from my scar. No, Dumbledore admitted. He is diminished but not destroyed. And recent signs suggest he may be finding ways to regain strength. His blue eyes met Harry's green ones directly. Which makes your training all the more vital. After Dumbledore departed, Paralis nuzzled against Harry's cheek, sending warmth and reassurance through their bond. I know, Harry murmured. We've got time. 3 more years to prepare before Hogwarts, before I have to face whatever's out there. The phoenix trilled softly, its meaning clear even without their bond. Some things won't wait for convenient timing. Harry hadn't yet learned how prophetic those feelings would prove to be. 2 days after the ministry delegation departed, the first unexplained fire erupted in a Muggle village 10 miles from the mountain range. By week's end, 3 more villages had experienced strange, seemingly targeted blazes that destroyed specific buildings while leaving adjacent structures untouched. The Enclave Council convened an emergency session, summoning Ignatius from his training with Harry. Something's wrong, Harry told Seraphina as they watched flame sages hurrying toward the council chamber. That's the 3rd emergency meeting this week. They sat in their favorite alcove overlooking the valley below, supposedly working on theoretical studies but actually enjoying the rare spring sunshine filtering through the mountain's protective wards. It's the fires, Seraphina said, closing her textbook. My father said they're definitely magical in origin, but with a corruption they haven't seen before. Harry frowned. Kieran Blackthornne. Maybe. She twisted a strand of hair anxiously. But the binding they placed on him should have prevented this level of power. He'd need help breaking it. What kind of help? Dark magic. Serious dark magic. Her amber eyes met his. The kind associated with Voldemort's followers. A chill ran down Harry's spine despite the warm sun. You think Death Eaters found Blackthorne? That they're working together? It would explain a lot, Seraphina reasoned. Blackthorne wants revenge against the Enclave. Death Eaters want to find you. Convenient alliance. Before Harry could respond, Paralis appeared in a flash of flame, looking agitated. Through their bond came urgent impressions, Ignatius searching for Harry, important news, potential danger. We're needed, Harry said, standing quickly. They found Ignatius in his private study, his expression grim as he examined a map spread across his desk. Red markers indicated the locations of the mysterious fires, forming a pattern that seemed to be closing in on the mountains. Ah, good, you're both here, he said, looking up. Seraphina, your father has requested your presence as well. We have a situation developing. Blackthorne? Harry guessed. Ignatius nodded sharply. Confirmed by witnesses in the last village. He's making no effort to hide his identity, quite the opposite. He wants us to know it's him. What does the council plan to do? Seraphina asked. Send a delegation of flame sages to intercept him before he reaches the mountain wards, Ignatius replied. Your father will lead them. Alarm flashed across Seraphina's face. But if Blackthornne has Death Eater support, precisely our concern, Ignatius cut in. Which is why you two must remain here under enhanced protection. Particularly you, Harry. That's ridiculous, Harry protested. I've been training for years specifically to handle threats like this. Training is not experience, Ignatius said firmly. And Blackthornne is no ordinary opponent. He was once among our most talented fire mages, and whatever has broken his binding has granted him new abilities we don't fully understand. All the more reason to have every capable fire mage involved, Harry argued. You saw what I did in the trials. I can help. Ignatius's expression hardened. This is not a competition, Harry. This is life and death. You are 8 years old, regardless of your abilities, your judgment and experience remain those of a child. The words stung, but Harry recognized the truth in them. Still, sitting safely inside while others faced danger felt wrong. What would you have us do, then? He asked. Stay within the inner wards. Continue your studies. And be prepared to evacuate if necessary. Ignatius's tone softened slightly. I understand your frustration, but your safety is paramount, not just because of who you are, but because I care about you. Harry nodded reluctantly. Yes, Master Ignatius. The same goes for you, Seraphina, Ignatius added. Your father was most insistent. She looked mutinous but nodded as well. After they were dismissed, Seraphina pulled Harry into an empty corridor. We're not actually staying put, are we? What? Harry blinked in surprise. Come on, Potter. I know that look. You're planning something. Harry hesitated. He had been considering options, but nothing concrete. I don't want to put you in danger, Sarah. She rolled her eyes. As if you could. I scored higher than you in defensive techniques, remember? By 2 points, he muttered. Still counts. Her expression grew serious. Look, this involves both of us. Blackthornne was my father's apprentice and my former betrothed. And he's obviously trying to get to you. We have a right to know exactly what's happening. Harry couldn't argue with her logic. What do you suggest? A mischievous smile spread across her face. Remember that spying technique we practiced last term? With the fire viewing? Scrying through flame, Harry nodded. But we'd need a connection to the location we want to view. Seraphina's smile widened. My father always carries my mother's enchanted lighter. Family connection. If I can tune the scrying flame to that. We could see and hear whatever's happening around him, Harry finished, impressed despite his concerns. But that's advanced magic, Sarah. Even for you. That's why I need your help, she admitted. Your raw power combined with my precision. Together we might manage it. Harry considered for only a moment before nodding. Okay. But we only watch. If there's actual danger, we alert the council immediately. Deal, she agreed quickly. Meet me in the small meditation room after evening meal. Fewer wards to interfere there. As she hurried off to prepare, Harry felt Paralysis' disapproval through their bond. I know it's risky, he told the Phoenix. But doing nothing feels worse. Paralysis didn't seem convinced, but he didn't try to stop Harry either. Some lessons, the Phoenix had learned, his human needed to experience firsthand. The meditation room sat at the edge of the apprentice quarters, a small, circular chamber with a single fire pit at its center and cushions arranged around it. As one of the few places apprentices could practice unsupervised, its wards were lighter than most enclave locations. Harry arrived to find Seraphina already there, the room's entrance subtly warded with a notice-me-not charm to discourage interruptions. Impressive, he commented on the spell work. She shrugged. Basic stuff. The real challenge comes next. From her robes, she produced a small silver bowl and a vial of clear liquid that shimmered with magical potential. Memory water, she explained, pouring it into the bowl. From the archives. It amplifies connections between magically linked objects or people. You stole that? Harry asked, alarmed. Borrowed, she corrected primly. I'll return it tomorrow. Next came a single strand of her own hair, which she placed in the bowl. Blood would work better, but hair will do. Harry watched as she lit the room's central fire with a practiced gesture, then placed the bowl carefully at the edge of the flames. Now we combine our magic, she instructed. I'll establish the connection to my father, you power the viewing spell. They knelt on opposite sides of the fire pit, hands extended toward the flames. Seraphina began murmuring in ancient Phoenician, the original language of fire magic before Latin derivatives became standard. Harry closed his eyes, sensing the pattern of her spell forming in the flames between them. When she nodded sharply, he channeled his magic into the framework she'd created, careful to maintain a steady flow rather than the overwhelming surge his emotions typically produced. The fire turned brilliant blue, then purple, before settling into a deep crimson glow. The flames rose from the pit, flattening into a vertical sheet that shimmered like a heat mirage. It's working, Seraphina whispered, her face illuminated by the unnatural light. Focus on my father. Sage Flameheart, follow the connection. The crimson sheet rippled, images slowly forming within the flames. At first just shadows and light, then gradually resolving into a forest scene. A group of robed figures moved cautiously between tall pines, led by a tall man with Seraphina's distinctive auburn hair streaked with silver, her father. I can see them, Harry confirmed. 7 flame sages including your father. Seraphina's hands trembled slightly with the effort of maintaining the spell. Can you hear anything? Harry concentrated harder, pushing more power into the connection. Faint sounds emerged from the flame, footsteps on forest debris, murmured conversation, the call of a bird. They're tracking something, he reported. Following magical signatures through the woods. The flame image shifted as the sages changed direction, heading toward what appeared to be a small clearing ahead. Tension was visible in their postures, wands and fire staves at the ready. Sage Flameheart signaled for the group to halt at the clearing's edge. He stepped forward alone, scanning the open space carefully. A voice came through the viewing flame, distorted but understandable. I know you're there, Kieran, Flameheart called. Show yourself. This ends now. Mocking laughter echoed through the clearing. Oh, I think it's just beginning. Master. A figure emerged from the opposite tree line, a gaunt man with wild eyes and burned scars covering the left side of his face. Despite the damage, he moved with dangerous grace, hands already wreathed in flickering green flames unlike any enclave magic Harry had seen before. Kieran Blackthornne, Seraphina whispered, her voice tight with emotion. You break our laws, violate your binding, attack innocent villages, Flameheart said, his voice hard. For what purpose? Blackthorne smiled, the expression grotesque on his scarred face. Invitation, of course. I needed to get your attention. You have it, Flameheart replied coldly. Along with the attention of the full council. Surrender now and your judgment may be merciful. Blackthorne laughed again. I'm not here for mercy, old man. I'm here for what's mine. The flame view suddenly distorted as Blackthorne gestured sharply. Green fire erupted from the ground in a circle around the clearing, cutting off the flame sage's retreat. This wasn't ordinary fire, it moved with malevolent intelligence, forming barriers and lashing tendrils that seemed to devour light rather than create it. Corrupted Fiendfyre, Harry breathed in horror. He's modified it somehow. The sages responded instantly, conjuring defensive shields and counterflames, but the green fire resisted their control, slipping past defenses as though they weren't there. You like my improvements? Blackthorne taunted as the sages fought to contain the spreading corruption. Amazing what you can accomplish with the right mentorship. As he spoke, dark-robed figures materialized around the clearing's perimeter, at least a dozen, their faces hidden behind silver masks. Death Eaters, Harry hissed. Seraphina's concentration wavered, the viewing flame flickering dangerously. Father, she whispered. On the other side of the flame window, chaos erupted. The flame sages fought valiantly, their mastery of fire magic impressive even against overwhelming odds. Sage Flameheart in particular moved like a dancer, weaving traditional enclave techniques with creative adaptations that kept the corrupted fire at bay around him. But the combination of Death Eaters casting dark curses and Blackthornne's modified Fiendfyre proved too much. One by one, the sages fell, some stunned, others bound in green flames that didn't burn but seemed to drain their magical energy. We have to get help, Harry said urgently. The council needs to know. Not yet, Seraphina interrupted, her eyes fixed on the scene. We need to hear what Blackthornne wants. In the clearing, only Sage Flameheart remained standing, surrounded by fallen comrades and hemmed in by green fire on all sides. Despite his predicament, he maintained his dignity, glaring defiantly at his former apprentice. What do you want, Kieran? He demanded. If it's vengeance, take it from me and leave the enclave in peace. Blackthornne approached, the corrupted fire parting before him. Always the noble sacrifice, aren't you? But I'm not interested in just you. His scarred face twisted in a smile. I want what was promised to me. Your daughter. And the boy who lived. Seraphina gasped, her concentration slipping further. The viewing flame wavered violently. Steady, Harry urged her, pouring more of his own magic into the connection to compensate. We need to hear this. You'll never touch either of them, Flameheart spat. The enclave will protect them with every resource we have. The enclave is weak, Blackthornne sneered. Hiding in your mountains, practicing your pure, controlled magic while the real world moves on. He gestured to the Death Eaters. My new associates have shown me what true power looks like, power without arbitrary restrictions. One of the masked figures stepped forward. Enough games. Where is Potter? That was our arrangement. Patience, Blackthornne replied smoothly. The boy will come to us, especially when he sees what happens to those who protect him. He turned back to Flameheart. You're going to help me deliver a message. Without warning, Blackthornne thrust his hand forward, sending a spear of green fire directly into Flameheart's chest. The sage dropped to his knees, gasping in agony as the corruption spread through his body. No! Seraphina screamed, losing control completely. The viewing flame collapsed with a thunderous boom that shook the meditation room. Harry was thrown backward, his head striking the stone wall hard enough to momentarily stun him. When his vision cleared, he found Seraphina collapsed beside the fire pit, tears streaming down her face. My father, she choked out. He's going to kill my father. Harry scrambled to her side. We don't know that. The spell broke before, you saw what that fire did, she interrupted. That wasn't normal Fiendfyre. It was corrupted, dark. Her voice broke. We have to tell the council. Now. But as they rose to leave, the meditation room door burst open. Standing in the entrance was Master Ignatius, his expression thunderous. What have you done? He demanded, taking in the remnants of their spell work. Do you have any idea of the danger? Blackthornne has captured the sages, Harry cut in desperately. Death Eaters are with him. They're after me and Seraphina. And Sage Flameheart is injured. Ignatius froze. How do you know this? Seraphina stepped forward, still trembling but regaining her composure. We scried them. Through my family connection. Foolish children, Ignatius muttered, though his anger was quickly replaced by urgent purpose. Come with me. The council needs to hear this directly. As they hurried through the corridors, Harry felt Paralysis' presence before he saw him. The phoenix appeared above them in a burst of flame, circling anxiously. I know, Harry communicated through their bond. We're in trouble. Big trouble. The Phoenix's response carried surprising intensity, not just trouble. War. The council received their report in grim silence. When Seraphina described the corrupted Fiendfyre and her father's injury, Elder Lyra closed her eyes briefly in pain. This confirms our worst fears, she said when they finished. Kieran Blackthornne has indeed aligned with Death Eaters, and his binding has not only been broken but twisted to channel dark magic through his fire techniques. We must mount a rescue immediately, another council member urged. It's obviously a trap, countered a third. They want us to send our remaining forces so they can pick us off in smaller groups. My father is dying. Seraphina burst out, her composure finally breaking. We can't just abandon them. Ignatius placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. No one is suggesting abandonment, child. But we must proceed carefully. Elder Lyra nodded. Master Ignatius is right. This attack was strategically planned to draw us out. Blackthorne knows our protocols, our defenses, our techniques. And now he has hostages to ensure our cooperation. What do they want? Harry asked quietly. Besides me and Seraphina. Control of the mountain, most likely, Ignatius answered. The Fiendfyre reservoirs beneath us are a source of immense magical power. In the wrong hands. Like Voldemort's, Harry finished. A tense silence fell across the chamber. We cannot be certain the Dark Lord himself is involved, Elder Lyra said carefully. But his followers certainly are, which suggests his influence if not his direct presence. So what do we do? Harry pressed. The council exchanged looks before Lyra spoke again. We will strengthen our defenses and prepare for potential evacuation of our youngest members. Meanwhile, a small reconnaissance team will assess the situation at the capture site. I'm going, Seraphina declared. Absolutely not, Ignatius said firmly. He's my father. And you are exactly who Blackthorne wants, Ignatius countered. You would be walking directly into his hands. Harry stepped forward. What if that's exactly what we need to do? All eyes turned to him. Explain, Elder Lyra demanded. Blackthorne wants me and Seraphina. He's attacking villages and capturing sages to force us to come to him. Harry met each council member's gaze in turn. So we give him what he wants, on our terms. No, Ignatius said immediately. Out of the question. Hear me out, Harry insisted. I'm not suggesting we actually surrender. But what if we make him think we're willing to negotiate? Create a distraction that allows a rescue team to free the captives while Blackthorne is focused on us? Seraphina caught on quickly. We could use the emergency port keys. If things go wrong, we activate them and return instantly to the enclave. Too risky, a council member argued. Blackthorne will have anti-port key wards. Not against enclave port keys, Ignatius said thoughtfully. Our method uses fire transference rather than standard port key magic. He would need specific countermeasures. Which he might have, Lyra cautioned. We cannot underestimate him. We also can't abandon the sages, Harry countered. And every hour we delay, Blackthorne's corrupted fire spreads through Sage Flameheart and the others. The debate continued for another hour, with proposals and counter-proposals flying across the chamber. Eventually, a modified version of Harry's plan was reluctantly approved, not a direct confrontation, but a controlled observation mission with emergency extraction protocols in place. Harry, Seraphina, Ignatius, and two other senior flame sages would approach Blackthorne's last known position under heavy protective enchantments. They would assess the situation, attempt to locate the hostages, and retreat with that information to plan a proper rescue. Under no circumstances were Harry or Seraphina to reveal themselves or attempt direct contact with Blackthorne. This is reconnaissance only, Elder Lyra emphasized, fixing Harry with a stern look. Your Phoenix-enhanced Fiendfyre may be impressive, young man, but Blackthorne has years of experience and dark magic enhancements we don't understand. This is not a flame trial competition. I understand, Harry assured her, though privately he had already decided he would do whatever necessary to help rescue Seraphina's father and the other captives. As they prepared to depart, Ignatius pulled Harry aside. "I know what you're thinking," his mentor said quietly. "That heroic rescue attempts are justified when lives are at stake." Harry didn't deny it. "Wouldn't you do the same?" Ignatius sighed. "Yes. Which is precisely why I'm telling you this now. Blackthorne isn't just after you because you're the boy who lived. He wants your phoenix bond." Harry frowned. "What do you mean?" "There's an ancient, forbidden ritual," Ignatius explained reluctantly. "A way to forcibly transfer a phoenix bond from one wizard to another. It was banned centuries ago because it invariably kills both the original bonded wizard and the phoenix." Cold understanding washed over Harry. "He wants to take paralysis from me. To gain Fiendfyre for his corrupted magic." "Yes." Ignatius gripped Harry's shoulders. "So whatever heroics you're contemplating, remember this: if Blackthorne captures you, it's not just your life at risk. It's paralysis too." The phoenix, perched nearby, trilled softly. Through their bond came not fear but resolute determination. Paralysis would face any danger at Harry's side. "We'll be careful," Harry promised. But sometimes, careful wasn't enough when facing determined enemies who had nothing left to lose. They departed at dusk, using one of the enclave's lesser-known exits, a narrow tunnel that emerged in a sheltered gorge 2 miles from where the sages had been ambushed. The sky above glowed orange with sunset, casting long shadows across the forested landscape. Harry and Seraphina wore specially enchanted robes that would help conceal their magical signatures. Paralysis had reluctantly agreed to remain invisible unless absolutely necessary, maintaining his bond with Harry but not physically manifesting where enemies might detect him. "Stay close," Ignatius instructed as they moved through the forest. "And remember, observation only." Seraphina nodded tightly, her face set with determination. Since the council meeting, she had become eerily focused, her usual banter replaced by silent intensity that worried Harry more than tears would have. The 2 senior sages accompanying them, Master Kai and Mistress Orla, moved with predatory grace, constantly scanning their surroundings for magical and physical threats. Both had fought in the wizarding war against Voldemort before retreating to the Enclave's sanctuary, and their experience showed in every careful movement. As they approached the ambush site, Ignatius signaled for silence, casting additional disillusionment charms over the group. They crept forward through increasingly dense underbrush until the clearing came into view. Or what remained of it. The once natural space had been transformed into something nightmarish. Blackthorne's corrupted Fiendfyre had scorched the ground in spiral patterns that still glowed with sickly green embers. At the center stood a crude stone altar, its surface stained with what appeared to be dried blood. But no captives. No Blackthorne. No Death Eaters. "They've moved on," Master Kai whispered, kneeling to examine the ground. "Recently, within hours." "Can you track them?" Ignatius asked. Kai nodded. "The corrupted fire leaves magical residue. It's distinctive." "Wait," Seraphina breathed, pointing to something glinting near the altar. "There's something there." Before anyone could stop her, she darted forward into the clearing, staying low and moving swiftly to the object. She returned moments later, clutching a familiar silver lighter in her trembling hand. "My father's," she confirmed. He dropped it deliberately. "Look." She opened it, revealing a tiny parchment scrolled inside where the flame would normally appear. Ignatius carefully extracted and enlarged the message. Written in hasty script were coordinates and 2 words, cabin. Trap. "He managed to leave us a warning and location," Mistress Orla said, impressed. "Or Blackthorne forced him to," Kai countered grimly. "This could be part of the trap." Ignatius studied the coordinates. "This is 8 miles north, a remote area with several abandoned logging structures. Defensible. Limited approach routes. Perfect for an ambush, Orla agreed. We should return to the enclave with this information, Ignatius decided. Plan properly with the full council. That will take hours. Serafina protested. My father left this message at great risk. Every minute we delay, is a minute we use to ensure we don't lose more people, Ignatius cut her off. I understand your urgency, Serafina, but rushing in without, a sudden rustling from the forest edge silenced him. Everyone dropped into defensive positions as a figure stumbled into the clearing, a badly injured enclave sage, his robes torn and singed, blood streaming from a gash across his forehead. Sage Morin. Kai exclaimed, rushing to support the wounded man. Trap, Morin gasped. All a trap. Blackthorne knew, tracking us all along. The hairs on the back of Harry's neck stood up. Through his bond with Pyralis came an urgent warning, danger approaching fast from multiple directions. It's an ambush, he shouted. Here and now. Green fire erupted from the ground around the clearing's edge, cutting off their retreat. Dark-robed figures materialized among the trees, wands already casting. Shields. Ignatius commanded, conjuring a dome of protective fire over their group as the first volley of spells struck. Chaos erupted. The senior sages responded with practiced precision, returning fire while maneuvering to protect Harry and Serafina. Sage Morin collapsed completely, either unconscious or dead. Harry acted on instinct, drawing on his training. He summoned his inner flame, channeling it through both hands to create a rotating barrier of fire that intercepted several curses aimed directly at him. Beside him, Serafina fought with cold fury, her techniques more precise than powerful but devastatingly effective. A Death Eater who broke through their initial defenses found himself suddenly engulfed in a cage of white-hot flame that didn't burn his flesh but systematically melted through his wand and mask. The port keys. Ignatius shouted over the din of battle. Use them now. Harry grabbed for the emergency port key concealed in his robes, a small crystal designed to transport him instantly back to the enclave when activated with a specific word. Nothing happened when he spoke the activation phrase. They're blocked, he called to Ignatius. Anti-port key wards. A mocking laugh cut through the battle noise. Kieran Blackthornne stepped into the clearing, his scarred face illuminated by the eerie glow of corrupted fiendfyre that crawled over his body like a living second skin. Welcome, honored guests, he called. So predictable. So easy. Ignatius stepped forward, positioning himself between Blackthorne and the children. This ends now, Kieran. Whatever grievance you hold against the enclave, these children are innocent. Innocent? Blackthorne spat. The Phoenix thief and my promised bride? I think not. His gaze fixed on Harry with disturbing intensity. The boy has what should be mine. The ultimate fire magic. Phoenix fire. As if summoned by his name, Pyralis chose that moment to materialize, appearing in a burst of flame above Harry's head and screeching defiance at Blackthorne. Yes, Blackthorne breathed, his eyes gleaming with obsession. Come to me, beautiful creature. Soon you'll have a worthy master. You'll never touch him, Harry said, his voice steadier than he felt. Phoenixes choose their companions. They can't be taken. Not through ordinary means, no, Blackthorne agreed with a terrible smile. But I've learned extraordinary methods. He gestured, and the corrupted Fiendfyre parted to reveal what it had been concealing, the captured flame sages, bound to crude wooden posts, their bodies partially consumed by the sickly green flames. Serafina gasped in horror. Father. Sage Flameheart hung limply against his bonds, his once vibrant features now ashen. The green fire seemed to be feeding on his magical essence, drawing it out slowly and painfully. He's still alive, Blackthorne said conversationally. They all are, barely. The fire consumes magic before flesh. Quite ingenious, don't you think? You're insane, Ignatius growled. I'm evolved, Blackthorne corrected. And soon, with the boy's phoenix bond transferred to me, I'll transcend even the Dark Lord's power. He turned to the Death Eaters. Secure the children. Kill the others. Everything happened at once. The Death Eaters attacked en masse as Blackthorne summoned a massive wave of corrupted Fiendfyre. Ignatius and the senior sages responded with their most powerful defensive magic, creating a momentary stalemate. In the confusion, Harry made a split-second decision. He grabbed Seraphina's hand. Trust me, he whispered urgently. Before she could respond, he closed his eyes and reached through his bond with Paralis, calling on their deepest connection. Phoenixes could flame travel, teleport through fire, and Harry had been practicing extending that ability through their bond. He'd never attempted it with a passenger, never tried it under combat conditions, and certainly never attempted to penetrate anti-portkey wards this way. But Paralis understood his desperate plan instantly. The Phoenix dived toward them, talons extended. The moment he made contact with Harry's shoulder, Harry visualized their destination, not the enclave, which would likely be warded against even this form of travel, but the cabin coordinates from Sage Flameheart's message. If Blackthorne had the captives here, the cabin might be minimally defended. They could assess the situation, maybe free any remaining prisoners, then flame travel back to this clearing with reinforcements. Fire engulfed them, not Blackthorne's corrupted green flames but the pure gold of Phoenix fire. For a moment, Harry felt resistance as they pushed against the wards, then a painful tearing sensation as Paralis's magic forced a way through. The world dissolved into heat and light. They rematerialized inside a dimly lit cabin, the floor beneath them rough-hewn wood rather than forest clearing. Harry stumbled, disoriented from the difficult transit, while Seraphina dropped to her knees beside him, gasping for breath. "What did you do?" she panted. "Phoenix travel," Harry managed, fighting his own nausea. "Bypassed the wards." Paralis looked hardly better, his usually vibrant plumage dulled from the effort. He settled on Harry's shoulder, trembling slightly. "You brought us to the cabin coordinates," Seraphina realized, looking around. "The exact place my father warned was a trap. I figured if Blackthorne was at the clearing, this place might be less guarded," Harry explained. "Maybe we could free any captives they left behind, get information, or walk directly into a secondary trap," came a cold voice from the shadows. Harry whirled around, automatically pushing Seraphina behind him. From the darkness stepped a Death Eater, silver mask gleaming in the faint light filtering through boarded windows. "The Dark Lord will be most pleased," the Death Eater said, raising his wand. "The boy who lived, delivered directly to us by his own foolishness." Harry reacted instinctively, summoning fire to his palms, but the sustained flame travel had drained him more than he realized. Instead of his usual controlled flames, only sparks sputtered from his fingertips. The Death Eater laughed. "Impressive parlor tricks, boy. But real power," he never finished the sentence. Seraphina, who had silently circled while Harry inadvertently played distraction, struck from behind. Her fire whip, a technique she'd perfected during the trials, wrapped around the Death Eater's wand arm, searing through fabric to the flesh beneath. The man screamed, dropping his wand as Seraphina followed with a precise kick to the back of his knee, a move from the Enclave's physical combat training. As the Death Eater fell, Harry lunged for the dropped wand, snatching it up and pointing it at their attacker. "Stupefy," he shouted, channeling his remaining magic through the unfamiliar wand. The spell hit with surprising force, blasting the Death Eater backward into the cabin wall where he slumped, unconscious. "Nice teamwork," Harry said, breathing hard. "Don't get cocky," Seraphina replied, though a ghost of her usual smirk crossed her face. "That was one guard. And your fire magic is drained." "Not completely," Harry countered, though he knew she was right. The flame travel had sapped his reserves dangerously low. "And now we have a wand." They quickly searched the cabin, finding it consisted of just 3 rooms, the main living area where they'd arrived, a small bedroom, and what appeared to be a root cellar accessed through a trapdoor in the floor. "Someone's down there," Seraphina whispered, ear pressed to the wooden trapdoor. "I hear breathing." Harry readied the stolen wand while Seraphina prepared to open the door. They counted silently to 3, then yanked it open, prepared for another attack. Instead, they found a single prisoner, a man chained to the earthen wall, his enclave robes torn and filthy. Despite his sorry state, he looked up at them with clear, cognizant eyes. "Sage Tully!" Seraphina exclaimed, recognizing one of her father's close associates. "Children," he rasped, his voice hoarse from disuse or screaming. "You shouldn't be here. It's all a trap." "We know," Harry said, descending the crude ladder into the cellar. "But so was the clearing. Blackthorne ambushed our rescue party." Alarm flashed across Tully's gaunt features. "Ignatius?" "Fighting when we left," Seraphina explained, examining the magical chains binding the sage. "These are complex. I don't know if we can break them without the key or counterspell." Harry handed her the wand. "You're better at precise magic. I'll keep watch upstairs." While Seraphina worked on freeing Tully, Harry returned to the main room, checking windows and securing the unconscious Death Eater with improvised bindings. Paralis remained on his shoulder, gradually regaining strength and sending encouragement through their bond. "We need to get back to help the others," Harry told his phoenix. "But not until you've recovered enough for safe travel." Paralis trilled softly in agreement. Forcing their way through anti-transportation wards had taken a severe toll on the magical bird. Another attempt too soon could prove fatal. Harry was checking the front door's security when he heard a sharp intake of breath from Seraphina below. "Harry," she called urgently. "You need to hear this." He hurried back to the cellar, finding Sage Tully now sitting up, one arm free from the chains while Seraphina worked on the other. "Tell him," she prompted the sage. Tully's expression was grim. "Blackthorne doesn't just want the Phoenix bond, Harry. The ritual he's planning requires both you and the Phoenix, and a third component." "What third component?" Harry asked, dread building in his stomach. "A blood sacrifice with a pre-existing magical connection to you," Tully said heavily. "Someone whose magic is compatible but distinct. A complement to your own power." Harry's eyes met Seraphina's, understanding dawning horribly. "That's why he wants both of us." Tully nodded. "You for the Phoenix bond. Seraphina for the blood sacrifice. Together, if his ritual succeeds, he would gain not just Fiendfyre but a magnified version that combines both your magical signatures. That's why he separated the prisoners," Seraphina realized. "Some at the clearing as bait, you here as bait for a separate trap." "And the Death Eaters?" Harry asked. "What do they get from this?" "Access to the Enclave's Fiendfyre reservoirs," Tully explained. "And you, delivered to their master." Blackthorne promised them both in exchange for their help breaking his binding and enhancing his fire magic with dark arts. The implications were staggering. If Blackthorne succeeded, he would possess power beyond anything the wizarding world had seen, corrupted Phoenix fire magnified by sacrificial blood magic. And the Death Eaters would gain control of the Enclave's ancient power source, potentially providing Voldemort with the means to fully return. "We need to warn the others," Harry said urgently. "Stop the ritual before it begins." "Too late for that," came a voice from above. Harry spun to see the supposedly unconscious Death Eater standing at the top of the cellar stairs, wand trained on them. Except he wasn't wearing his mask anymore, and the face beneath wasn't what Harry expected. "Sage Morin," he gasped, recognizing the injured sage from the clearing. "Surprised?" Morin smiled coldly. "Not everyone in the Enclave shares Ignatius's traditional views. Some of us recognize the potential in Blackthorne's innovations." "You're a traitor," Seraphina spat. "You led us into the ambush." "I prefer the term evolutionary opportunist," Morin replied. "Now, be good children and come upstairs. Your transportation back to the main ritual site is waiting, and Blackthornne grows impatient. Harry's mind raced. Paralis was still too weak for flame travel. The Death Eater, no, the traitor sage, had them at one point, and both he and Seraphina were magically drained from their respective exertions. But not completely defenseless. Harry caught Seraphina's eye, giving her the slightest nod. They'd practiced combat scenarios countless times in training, developing signals and strategies for situations just like this. She blinked once in acknowledgement, then without warning collapsed to the ground as though fainting. What trick is this? Morin demanded, his attention momentarily diverted. That split second was all Harry needed. He thrust his hand forward, summoning not an external flame but the last reserves of his inner fire. The magical energy shot from his palm not as fire but as pure concussive force, a technique Ignatius had taught him for emergencies when finesse wasn't possible. The blast caught Morin squarely in the chest, throwing him backward up the stairs and out of sight. Harry heard a crash as the traitor collided with something in the main room. Go, he urged Seraphina, who was already back on her feet, the feigned faint forgotten. They scrambled up the ladder, Harry helping Tully whose second arm Seraphina had managed to free during their exchange with Morin. In the main room, they found the traitor sage sprawled unconscious amid broken furniture, blood trickling from a gash on his temple. That won't hold him long, Tully warned. And he undoubtedly has backup nearby. Paralis? Harry asked his phoenix, who had fluttered to a windowsill. The bird tilted his head, considering, then gave a tentative trill. He could manage one more flame travel, but it would be risky. We don't have a choice, Harry told him, gathering his remaining strength. We need to return to the clearing, warn Ignatius about the ritual. If they're still alive, Seraphina said softly. Harry refused to consider that possibility. They're alive. And they need us. He held out his hands to Seraphina and Tully. Hold on tight. This will be rough. As they joined hands, Paralis launched from the windowsill, circling them once before landing on Harry's shoulder. Fire engulfed them just as the cabin door burst open, revealing more Death Eaters rushing in. The world dissolved again into flame and song. They emerged into nightmare. The clearing had transformed in their absence, the corrupted Fiendfyre now arranged in complex ritual patterns around the central stone altar. The captive flame sages remained bound to posts, though they'd been repositioned to form a perfect circle around the altar. At the center stood Blackthornne, hands raised as he chanted in a language Harry didn't recognize. Green fire crawled over his body, responding to each guttural syllable by flaring higher. Of Ignatius and the rescue party, there was no sign, until Harry spotted them, bound and unconscious at the edge of the ritual circle. Their arrival did not go unnoticed. Death Eaters turned, wands raised, but hesitated when they recognized who had appeared. The boy, one shouted. And the girl. Blackthornne stopped his chanting, a terrible smile spreading across his scarred face. Perfect timing. The final components arrive just as the ritual reaches its crescendo. Harry, Seraphina, and Tully stood back to back, surrounded with no avenue of escape. Paralis slumped on Harry's shoulder, completely exhausted from the second flame travel. The Phoenix could offer no further magical assistance. Seraphina, Harry whispered urgently. Remember the flame trials? Our synchronized defense? She nodded minutely, understanding his plan. Sage Tully, Harry continued under his breath. When we move, get to Ignatius. Try to wake him. You cannot win this fight, children, Tully warned. There are too many. We don't need to win, Harry replied. Just disrupt the ritual long enough for help to arrive. What help? Seraphina asked. Harry managed a grim smile. The Enclave Council may be cautious, but they're not stupid. When we don't return and Ignatius doesn't report back, they'll send everyone. It was a desperate hope, but the only one they had. Blackthornne approached, flanked by Death Eaters. Bring them to the altar. Separate the phoenix from the boy, carefully. We need it alive for the transfer. Now! Harry shouted. He and Seraphina moved in perfect synchronization, dropping to one knee and slamming their palms against the ground. Their remaining magical energy flowed outward through the earth, seeking the residual heat from Blackthornne's ritual fires. The technique, a variation on what they'd performed during the trials, turned the latent thermal energy in the ground against itself, creating a shockwave that rippled outward in all directions. Death Eaters stumbled as the earth buckled beneath them. Ritual fires wavered, their carefully maintained patterns disrupting. Sage Tully seized the opportunity, breaking away toward the bound sages while Harry and Seraphina continued their assault, targeting the main ritual circle with concentrated pulses that fractured the ground beneath it. Blackthornne roared in fury as his carefully prepared ritual began to collapse. "Stop them," he commanded the Death Eaters. "The boy is mine." Harry had no intention of being captured. As Blackthornne advanced, Harry made a split-second decision. He removed Pyralis from his shoulder, holding the weakened phoenix gently. "Go," he whispered to his companion. "Get to safety. Find help." Pyralis resisted, unwilling to abandon Harry. "Please," Harry urged. "You can't help me if he captures you too." The phoenix understood the logic, if not the emotion. With a sorrowful trill, he gathered his remaining strength and disappeared in a small flash of flame, not traveling far, Harry knew, but hopefully to safety beyond the ritual boundaries. Without his phoenix's reassuring weight, Harry felt suddenly vulnerable, but he had no time to dwell on it. Seraphina grabbed his arm, pulling him toward where Tully was working to free Ignatius. "The ritual circle is breaking down," she reported. "But Blackthornne is adapting it on the fly. We need to." A jet of sickly green fire cut between them, forcing them to separate. Harry rolled to his feet, finding himself face to face with Kieran Blackthornne. "Impressive display, boy," the scarred man said, his voice almost conversational. "Ignatius taught you well." His eyes narrowed. "But not well enough." Blackthornne moved with frightening speed, his corrupted Fiendfyre forming a whip that lashed out toward Harry. Drawing on his last reserves, Harry countered with a shield of normal fire, painfully weak compared to his usual standards, but enough to deflect the initial strike. "Your phoenix abandons you," Blackthornne taunted. "Wise creature. It senses your inevitable defeat." "Pyralis didn't abandon me," Harry shot back, circling warily. "Unlike you, he understands loyalty." Anger flashed across Blackthornne's scarred features. "You know nothing of loyalty, boy. The enclave preaches it while practicing betrayal." His corrupted fire whip lashed out again. "They betrayed me when I sought to expand our understanding of fire magic. Cast me out for daring to innovate. You killed 3 apprentices." Harry countered, dodging the strike. "Necessary sacrifices for greater knowledge," Blackthornne dismissed. "Just as you will be." He attacked in earnest then, his corrupted fire taking multiple forms, whips, spears, serpents, all striking simultaneously from different angles. Harry's depleted defenses crumbled quickly under the assault. A tendril of green flame caught his ankle, sending searing pain up his leg as it began consuming his magical energy. Harry fell to one knee, gasping as the corruption spread. Around him, the clearing had devolved into chaos. Seraphina and Tully had managed to free Ignatius and several other sages, who now fought desperately against the Death Eaters despite their weakened state. Blackthornne loomed over Harry, triumph in his eyes. "You've lost, boy who lived. But take comfort, your power will serve a greater purpose in my hands." As the corrupted fire crept higher up Harry's leg, he felt his consciousness beginning to fade. The pain was excruciating, but worse was the sensation of his magic being forcibly extracted, pulled from his core by the unnatural flames. Through dimming vision, he saw Blackthornne raise his hands, resuming his ritual chant. The green fire responded, coalescing around them both, preparing for the Phoenix bond transfer even without Pyralis physically present. The magical connection was enough. Harry felt a horrifying tug at his very being, not just his magic but the essence of his bond with Pyralis being torn away. He screamed, the sound lost in the roaring of corrupted fire. Then, cutting through his agony, came another sound, a phoenix's cry, but not from Pyralis. This call was deeper, more commanding, and followed by the distinctive crack of apparition breaking through wards. The last thing Harry saw before darkness took him was a flash of brilliant white light and a figure with a long silver beard striding through the chaos, phoenix on his shoulder and wand raised in righteous fury. Dumbledore had arrived. And he was not alone. Chapter 3, Between Two Worlds. Harry woke to pain and darkness. His body felt wrong, hollow, like someone had scooped out his insides and replaced them with burning coal. He tried to move and immediately regretted it. "Easy there," came a familiar voice. "The corruption spread quite far before we could stop it." Harry forced his eyes open to find Dumbledore sitting beside his bed. The Hogwarts headmaster looked exhausted, the twinkle in his blue eyes dimmed by concern. "Pyralis?" Harry croaked, his first and only thought. "Safe," Dumbledore assured him. "Though weakened, like yourself." Relief flooded through Harry, momentarily overwhelming the pain. He tried to reach through their bond, seeking the familiar warmth of his phoenix companion, but found only a faint echo, present but distant. "I can't feel him properly," Harry said, panic rising. "The bond remains intact," Dumbledore explained. "But Blackthorn's ritual partially severed the connection. It will heal with time and proximity." Harry struggled to sit up despite the protest from every muscle. "Where am I? What happened to the others?" "Seraphina is recovering, like yourself," Dumbledore gently pushed him back down. "You're in the enclave's healing chambers." Blackthorne and his Death Eaters retreated when the order arrived, but not before causing significant damage. Memory returned in jagged flashes, the battle, Blackthorne's corrupted fire consuming his magic, the ritual beginning. "He almost took my bond with Pyralis." "Almost," Dumbledore agreed. "But Phoenix bonds are remarkably resilient, much like the birds themselves. And like yourself, Harry." The door opened, revealing Master Ignatius. The flame sage looked haggard, his face bearing new burns that would likely scar, but his eyes brightened at seeing Harry awake. "You had us worried, young man," he said, approaching the bed. "How do you feel?" "Like I got trampled by a herd of hippogriffs," Harry admitted. "But alive." Ignatius nodded. "The healers managed to purge most of the corruption from your system. Another day of rest and you should be able to move around." "What about the other sages? Seraphina's father?" A shadow crossed Ignatius's face. "Most are recovering. Sage Flameheart suffered the longest exposure to the corrupted fire. His condition is uncertain." Harry's heart sank. Seraphina must be devastated. "And Blackthorne?" "Escaped," Ignatius said grimly. "Along with most of his Death Eater allies. Though not unscathed, Albus here made quite the entrance." Dumbledore inclined his head modestly. "Fawkes deserves most of the credit. Phoenix flame travel can bypass even the strongest anti-apparition wards, as you yourself demonstrated rather impressively." Despite everything, Harry felt a flicker of pride at the compliment. "Will Blackthorne come back?" "Try again." "Not immediately," Dumbledore replied. "The ritual he attempted requires specific astronomical alignments that won't recur for several months. And his forces have been significantly depleted. But he will try again," Harry stated, not a question. Both men exchanged a look that confirmed his fears. "Yes," Ignatius said eventually. "Which is why we must prepare. The council is meeting now to discuss our options." "I should be there," Harry insisted, again trying to rise. "What you should be is resting," Ignatius countered firmly. "The council will make no final decisions without consulting you, but your recovery takes precedence." Harry wanted to argue, but exhaustion pulled at him, making even this brief conversation an effort. "At least let me see Pyralis." And Seraphina. Paralis will return when he's recovered enough, Dumbledore assured him. As for Miss Flameheart, she hasn't left her father's side since we returned. Harry nodded, understanding completely. Tell her I'm awake. When she has a moment. Of course. Ignatius adjusted Harry's blankets with uncharacteristic gentleness. Now, rest. That's an order from your master, apprentice. As they left, Harry closed his eyes, not to sleep but to focus inward. He explored the damage to his magical core, sensing the areas where Blackthornne's corruption had burned deepest. The hollow feeling persisted, not complete magical exhaustion, which he'd experienced before in training, but something more fundamental, as though part of him had been carved away. Would it heal completely? Or had Blackthornne managed to take something irreplaceable, even in his partial success? Only time would tell. And time, at least for now, was something Harry had plenty of. 3 days passed before Harry was deemed strong enough to leave the healing chambers. Even then, he moved gingerly, his body still recovering from magical trauma that had left physical marks, branching scars like lightning where the corrupted fire had touched his skin. Paralis had returned on the second day, appearing in a subdued flash of flame at the foot of Harry's bed. The phoenix looked diminished somehow, his brilliant plumage dulled and his movements lacking their usual grace. But when he hopped onto Harry's lap and pressed his head against Harry's chest, the familiar warmth of their bond flowed stronger, beginning the healing of their connection. "I've missed you," Harry whispered, stroking the golden feathers. Through their bond came answering affection and relief, though tinged with lingering pain that mirrored Harry's own. Now, finally vertical and dressed in fresh apprentice robes, Harry made his way slowly through the enclave corridors. The atmosphere had changed noticeably, flame sages patrolled in pairs, apprentices moved in tight groups rather than alone, and everywhere Harry looked, he saw evidence of strengthened wards and defensive preparations. The attack had shattered the enclave's centuries of peaceful isolation. War had come to the Fiendfyre Mountains. Harry's destination wasn't the council chamber or the training rooms, but the intensive healing ward where the most severely injured victims were still receiving care. He found Seraphina exactly where he expected, seated beside a bed containing the still form of her father. She looked up as he approached, dark circles under her eyes testifying to sleepless vigils. For a moment, her composure cracked, genuine relief flashing across her features. "You're awake," she said, rising to meet him. "And walking," Harry confirmed. "Barely." Without warning, she threw her arms around him in a fierce hug that made him wince but which he returned gladly. "You idiot," she whispered against his shoulder. "What were you thinking, facing Blackthornne alone?" "I was thinking I didn't have much choice," Harry replied as they separated. "How's your father?" Seraphina glanced back at the bed. Sage Flameheart lay motionless, his skin ashen except for green-tinged veins visible beneath the surface. Monitoring spells hovered above him, their readings incomprehensible to Harry but clearly concerning based on the healer's frequent checks. "Stable," she said tightly. The corruption reached his magical core but stopped just short of his life force. "They're trying experimental purification techniques, but..." She trailed off, uncharacteristically vulnerable. Harry placed a hand on her shoulder. "He's strong. And stubborn. Like his daughter." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "There are worse comparisons." They sat together beside the bed, silence comfortable between them despite the grim surroundings. Eventually, Harry asked the question weighing on him since waking. "What happened after I lost consciousness?" Dumbledore said the order arrived, but not much else. Seraphina's expression darkened with the memory. "Chaos. Pure chaos. One moment Blackthornne had you at the altar, his ritual almost complete. Then phoenixes, plural, appeared above the clearing. Dumbledore arrived with people in matching robes who fought like nothing I've ever seen. Not enclave techniques, but effective. The Order of the Phoenix, Harry supplied. Dumbledore's group that fought Voldemort during the war." She nodded. They broke through the Death Eater's lines while Dumbledore went straight for Blackthorne. Their duel was. She shook her head, still awed by the memory. I've never seen power like that. Not even from Master Ignatius. And Blackthorne still escaped. Only because he was willing to sacrifice his own people, Seraphina said with disgust. He triggered some kind of explosive curse that collapsed part of the clearing, buying time to flee with his inner circle. Left the other Death Eaters to be captured or killed. Harry absorbed this, troubled by the implications. Blackthorne hadn't just broken his binding and corrupted his fire magic, he'd abandoned the Enclave's most fundamental principles about the sanctity of life and the responsibility of power. The council's been meeting non-stop, Seraphina continued. Arguing about what to do next. Some want to abandon the mountains entirely, relocate the Enclave somewhere Blackthorne can't find us. Others want to fortify and prepare for his return. What do you think they'll decide? She shrugged. Neither option addresses the real problem. Blackthorne won't stop coming for what he wants. And now he knows exactly how to hurt us. The unspoken question hung between them, what would happen when he came back? Before Harry could respond, a commotion at the ward entrance drew their attention. Healers rushed toward a newly arrived patient on a floating stretcher, their urgent commands creating a bubble of activity amid the ward's usual quiet. Sage Tully, Seraphina whispered, recognizing the injured man. He was leading one of the scout patrols watching for Blackthorne's return. Harry felt cold dread settle in his stomach. They found something. Moments later, Master Ignatius burst into the ward, his expression confirming Harry's fears. He spotted them immediately, striding over with purpose. Harry, Seraphina. The council chamber. Now. The council chamber buzzed with tense conversation when they arrived. The 12 seats arranged around the central fire pit were filled, with additional chairs brought in for Dumbledore and several other visitors Harry didn't recognize. Everyone fell silent as Ignatius entered with Harry and Seraphina. You shouldn't be here, one sage protested, eyeing Harry's still weakened state. They have more right than most, Elder Lyra countered, gesturing for them to take seats near Dumbledore. They faced Blackthorne directly and survived to report. Ignatius took his council position, his expression grave. Sage Tully's patrol discovered Blackthorne's new base of operations. An abandoned Muggle mining complex in the northern foothills, now heavily warded and guarded by both Death Eaters and other entities. What entities? Someone asked. Fire elementals, Ignatius replied, sending a ripple of shock through the chamber. Corrupted and bound to his service. Tully's team was attacked by one, only his expertise in elemental magic allowed him to escape with his life. Harry exchanged alarmed glances with Seraphina. Fire elementals were rare, dangerous magical creatures that usually existed only partially in the physical world. To bind them required incredibly dark magic and even darker intent. That's not the worst of it, Ignatius continued. Before he was injured, Tully observed significant excavation activity. They're digging, directly into the mountain range, following a specific geological pattern. Elder Lyra leaned forward, her ancient face tight with concern. The Fiendfyre veins. He's tracing them back to their source. Precisely, Ignatius confirmed. At his current rate of progress, Blackthorne will reach the primary Fiendfyre reservoir within a week. Once he does. He didn't need to finish. Everyone present understood the catastrophic implications. The Fiendfyre reservoirs beneath the mountains weren't just the Enclave's power source, they were a primordial magical force, carefully contained and managed for centuries by generations of flame sages. In the wrong hands, they could become a weapon of unimaginable destruction. We must evacuate immediately, one council member urged. Secure our people and knowledge while we still can. And abandon the reservoirs to Blackthorne's corruption, another countered. The resulting cataclysm would devastate magical communities across Europe. Then we fight, a third suggested. A direct assault on his base before he can reach the veins. Arguments erupted across the chamber, each sage advocating for different approaches. Harry watched the debate swirl, struck by how quickly certainty had transformed into chaos. The enclave had existed in stable isolation for centuries, now its very foundations were threatened, and no one seemed to agree on how to respond. Dumbledore observed silently until Elder Lyra turned to him. "You've faced dark wizards corrupting ancient power sources before, Albus. What would you advise?" The chamber quieted, all eyes turning to the Hogwarts headmaster. "In my experience," Dumbledore began carefully, "neither total retreat nor frontal assault tends to succeed against an adversary like Blackthorne. The former cedes too much, the latter risks too much." "Then what alternative remains?" Ignatius asked. "Targeted intervention," Dumbledore replied. "A small team with specific objectives, disable the excavation, disrupt Blackthorne's control over his elemental forces, and if possible, capture Blackthorne himself." "That's still incredibly dangerous," Elder Lyra objected. "Who would volunteer for such a mission?" "I will," Harry said, standing before he could second-guess himself. Every head swiveled toward him, expressions ranging from shock to outrage. "Absolutely not," Ignatius said immediately. "You're still recovering, and you're precisely who Blackthorne wants to capture." "Which makes me the perfect distraction," Harry countered. "He's obsessed with my Phoenix bond. If I'm part of the team, his focus will be on me, not on whatever else we're doing." Seraphina stood beside him. "I'm going too." Out of the question, a sage Harry recognized as her uncle said sharply. "With your father incapacitated, with my father incapacitated, I have even more reason to stop Blackthorne," she cut him off, her voice steady despite the emotion behind it. "And Harry's right, Blackthorne wants both of us for his ritual. We're the bait he can't ignore." Dumbledore studied them thoughtfully. "There is logic to what they suggest, though I share your concerns about their safety." He turned to Harry. "You've shown remarkable courage, Harry, but courage alone isn't enough against an enemy of Blackthorne's caliber." "I know," Harry admitted. "But I also know his magic now, I've felt it from the inside. The corruption, how it works, its weaknesses." He touched his chest where the scars from the corrupted fire still lingered. "No one else here has experienced that firsthand." A heavy silence fell over the chamber as the council members considered his words. Even Ignatius looked torn between pride and protective instinct. "If, and I stress if, we considered such a plan," Elder Lyra said eventually, "the children would not go alone. They would need protection, guidance." "I'll go," Ignatius volunteered immediately. "As will I," Dumbledore added. "Along with select members of the Order experienced in covert operations." More discussion followed, gradually transforming from whether to allow Harry and Seraphina's participation to how best to utilize their unique positions while minimizing their risk. A plan took shape, not a frontal assault or complete retreat, but a precisely targeted mission to neutralize Blackthorne's threat to the Fiendfyre reservoirs. Meanwhile, the Enclave would prepare for evacuation as a contingency, and strengthen its defenses against potential attack. The dual approach satisfied no one completely but addressed the most urgent concerns from all sides. As the meeting concluded, Harry caught Seraphina watching him with an unreadable expression. "What?" he asked quietly as they left the chamber. "You're either the bravest or most foolish person I've ever met," she said. "Probably both." "You volunteered too," he pointed out. "Because I wasn't about to let you face him alone again." She hesitated, then added more softly, "I saw what his fire did to you, Harry. I watched you almost die." The raw emotion in her voice surprised him. They'd been friends for years, rivals almost as long, but this vulnerability was new, and somehow more intimidating than facing Blackthorne had been. "I'll be more careful this time," he promised. She scoffed. "No, you won't. But that's why I'm coming along, to make sure your recklessness doesn't get you killed." Before Harry could respond, Ignatius approached, his expression serious. "Both of you, with me." If you're to participate in this mission, we have much to prepare and very little time. The next 3 days passed in a blur of intensive preparation. Despite his lingering weakness, Harry threw himself into training with renewed determination. Ignatius pushed both him and Seraphina to their limits, focusing on defensive techniques against corrupted fire magic and methods to counter the elemental bindings Blackthorne had created. Paralis grew stronger alongside Harry, their bond gradually healing as they worked together. The Phoenix's presence became Harry's greatest comfort during exhausting training sessions that often left him collapsed in bed, muscles trembling from exertion. On the third evening, as Harry practiced a particularly difficult shield variant in one of the smaller training rooms, Dumbledore appeared in the doorway. "Most impressive," the headmaster commented as Harry successfully repelled a simulated attack of corrupted fire. "Particularly given your recent injuries." Harry lowered his hands, breathing hard. "It's still not strong enough. Blackthorne's real attacks are 10 times more powerful than these simulations." "True," Dumbledore acknowledged. "But you won't be facing him alone this time." Harry wiped sweat from his forehead. "You think our plan will work?" "I think it has a better chance than the alternatives," Dumbledore replied diplomatically. "Though I confess, I remain concerned about your involvement." "Because I'm the boy who lived?" Harry asked, unable to keep a hint of bitterness from his voice. "Because you're 8 years old," Dumbledore corrected gently. "Extraordinary abilities notwithstanding." Harry couldn't argue with that simple truth. Instead, he asked the question that had been nagging at him since waking in the healing chambers. "Sir, when Blackthorne was performing the ritual, trying to take my Phoenix bond, I felt something strange. Like he wasn't just taking Pyralis's connection, but something else. Something deeper." Dumbledore's expression grew troubled. "Yes, I feared that might be the case. Phoenix bonds connect not just to a wizard's magic but to their very essence, what some traditions call the soul. In attempting to steal your bond, Blackthorne was essentially trying to tear away a piece of your deepest self." The explanation matched what Harry had experienced, but raised further concerns. "If he tries again, could he succeed?" "Not in taking your bond, I think," Dumbledore said thoughtfully. "The ritual was interrupted at a critical juncture, and Pyralis's connection to you proved stronger than Blackthorne anticipated. However." He hesitated. "What?" Harry pressed. "The damage already done may have created a vulnerability," Dumbledore admitted. "A magical connection between you that Blackthorne could potentially exploit." Cold dread settled in Harry's stomach. "You mean he could control me? Or my magic?" "Not control, precisely. But influence, perhaps, under specific circumstances." Dumbledore studied him carefully. "Have you experienced any unusual sensations since the ritual? Dreams, visions, phantom pains?" Harry thought of the hollow feeling that hadn't quite disappeared, the occasional flashes of foreign emotion that didn't seem to belong to him or Pyralis. He'd attributed them to his recovery process, but now. "Sometimes," he admitted. "Nothing specific, just wrongness. Like something's missing or something's been added that doesn't belong." Dumbledore nodded gravely. "As I suspected. The connection works both ways, Harry. Just as he may sense or influence you, you may gain insights into his actions or intentions. That could be useful for our mission," Harry pointed out. "Indeed. But such connections are dangerous, particularly for the younger, less experienced mind." Dumbledore's blue eyes held Harry's gaze intently. "Promise me you will inform either myself or Master Ignatius immediately if these sensations intensify." "I promise," Harry agreed, understanding the seriousness of the situation. "Do you think Blackthorne knows about this connection?" "If not yet, he will soon discover it," Dumbledore said. "Which adds urgency to our task. The longer this connection exists, the stronger it may become." Harry absorbed this troubling information, another complication in an already complicated situation. "Is there any way to break it? After we stop him, I mean." "Several possibilities exist," Dumbledore assured him. But first, we must succeed in our mission. He glanced at the training room's enchanted clock, which begins in less than 12 hours. You should rest while you can, Harry. As Dumbledore turned to leave, Harry called after him. Professor. Thank you. For coming to help us. I don't think I've said that yet. The headmaster smiled slightly. You needn't thank me, Harry. Though I failed you once before, I intend to make better choices regarding your welfare from now on. After he departed, Harry attempted a few more shield variations before accepting that exhaustion was hampering his progress. As he made his way back to his quarters, he passed the intensive healing ward and paused, seeing Seraphina still at her father's bedside. He entered quietly, noting that Sage Flameheart's condition appeared unchanged, neither better nor worse than days before. You should be resting, he told Seraphina as he approached. So should you, she countered without looking up. But here we are. Harry sat beside her, studying her profile in the dim light. Always composed, always confident, even now, facing her father's possible death and their dangerous mission tomorrow, she maintained her dignity. But Harry had known her long enough to see the cracks in her armor, the slight tremor in her hands, the tension around her eyes. He'd be proud of you, Harry said softly. For standing up to Blackthorne. For protecting the enclave. He'd think I'm being foolish, she corrected, though without heat. Taking unnecessary risks. Maybe, Harry conceded. But he'd understand why. Seraphina finally turned to face him. Why are you really doing this, Harry? And don't say it's because you've experienced Blackthorne's magic firsthand. That's true, but it's not the whole truth. Harry considered deflecting, then decided against it. If they might die tomorrow, honesty seemed the better choice. Because I'm tired of things happening to me, he admitted. My parents dying, the Dursleys, even Pyralis choosing me, all things that happened without my input. This time, I'm choosing. I'm deciding to face Blackthorne, to protect the enclave, to stop running from the prophecy and everything it means. Understanding dawned in Seraphina's amber eyes. You're reclaiming your story. Trying to, Harry nodded. What about you? Why volunteer when you could stay here with your father? She looked back at the still form on the bed. Because staying wouldn't change his condition. But stopping Blackthorne might prevent others from suffering the same fate. Her voice hardened. And because he was supposed to be mine. Harry blinked, confused. What do you mean? Blackthorne, she clarified. The betrothal contract. In a twisted way, he believes I belong to him, a possession to be claimed. I need to show him, and myself, that I belong to no one except by my own choice. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of tomorrow's mission settling between them. Then, surprising both of them, Seraphina reached over and took Harry's hand. Whatever happens tomorrow, she said quietly, I'm glad we're facing it together. Harry squeezed her hand gently. We'll stop him. And then we'll find a way to help your father. Her answering smile was small but genuine, a rare gift he treasured all the way back to his quarters, where sleep claimed him despite his churning thoughts. Morning arrived with a sense of grim purpose permeating the enclave. The mission team gathered in the transportation chamber, a specialized area designed for coordinated flame travel and apparition. Besides Harry and Seraphina, the team included Master Ignatius, Dumbledore, and 3 Order members introduced as Aurors Kingsley Shacklebolt, Alastor Moody, and Nymphadora Tonks. The latter insisted immediately that Harry call her just Tonks, her hair shifting from brown to vibrant pink as she spoke. A metamorphmagus, Harry realized, recognizing the rare ability from his studies. Top marks, kid, she grinned. Might come in handy where we're going. The grizzled Auror with the magical eye, Moody, growled impatiently. Save the chit-chat. Let's review the plan one more time. Their strategy was elegantly simple in concept, though complex in execution. Using intelligence gathered by enclave scouts and order reconnaissance, they had identified 3 critical targets within Blackthornne's base. First, the excavation site where his forces were digging toward the Fiendfyre veins. Kingsley and Moody would focus on sabotaging this operation and placing magical barriers to prevent further progress. Second, the ritual chamber where Blackthornne conducted his elemental bindings and corrupt experiments. Dumbledore and Ignatius would target this area, dismantling the magical apparatus and freeing any bound elementals if possible. Third, and most dangerous, Blackthornne himself. Here, Harry and Seraphina would play their part, not confronting him directly, but allowing themselves to be detected just long enough to draw his attention while Tonks, disguised as a Death Eater, got close enough to hit him with specialized binding spells developed by the Enclave specifically to counter his corrupted magic. Remember, Ignatius emphasized, your only job is distraction. At the first sign that Blackthornne is mobilizing to pursue you, you activate your emergency port keys and return here immediately. What if the port keys don't work? Seraphina asked practically. Like last time. Different design, Moody interjected, tapping his own port key, a small metal disc worn as a pendant. These are keyed to individual magical signatures and activated by intent rather than keyword. Much harder to block. And we'll be monitoring your positions constantly, Dumbledore added, showing them an enchanted map that displayed 7 glowing dots representing team members. If either of you disappears from this map for more than 30 seconds, we abort the entire mission and focus solely on extraction. Harry nodded, Paralis shifting restlessly on his shoulder. The Phoenix had insisted on accompanying him despite the risks, and no one had seriously argued the point. After their near separation during the ritual, both were reluctant to be parted again. Any questions? Ignatius asked, looking specifically at Harry and Seraphina. What if we get a shot at Blackthornne directly? Harry asked. Before Tonks can position herself? You don't take it, Moody said flatly. He's beyond your skill level, boy, Phoenix or not. Harry wanted to object, but Seraphina touched his arm lightly. He's right, Harry. We've seen what Blackthornne can do. Our job is distraction, not confrontation. Reluctantly, Harry nodded his agreement. Good, Ignatius said. Positions everyone. Synchronize travel on my mark. They arranged themselves in the prescribed formation, Harry and Paralis, Seraphina, and Tonks in one group, Dumbledore, Ignatius, and Kingsley in another, Moody alone as the advance scout. 3. Ignatius began the countdown. 2. 1. Mark. Moody disappeared with a crack of apparition. Moments later, Paralis engulfed Harry's group in Phoenix fire while Fawkes did the same for Dumbledore's team. The world dissolved into flame and light. They emerged on a rocky slope overlooking what had once been a Muggle mining operation. Abandoned equipment rusted in the morning sun, and dilapidated buildings clustered around a large central structure that might have been an administration building or processing facility. To ordinary Muggle eyes, the site would appear completely deserted. But Harry could see the shimmering magical wards surrounding the complex, and the dark-robed figures patrolling at regular intervals. Moody's in position, Tonks whispered, checking a small communication device. No alarm raised by our arrival. Harry reached out with his magical senses, trying to locate Blackthornne. Instead, he felt something else, a faint resonance with the corrupted fire magic permeating the entire complex. The connection Dumbledore had warned about, responding to proximity. He's here, Harry said with certainty. Below ground, in what used to be the main mine shaft. Seraphina gave him a sharp look. How do you know that? I can feel him, Harry admitted. Through the connection his ritual created. Tonks frowned. That wasn't in the briefing. Recent development, Harry said tersely. But useful. I can tell he's working on something important, he's excited, anticipatory. All the more reason to stick to the plan, Tonks decided after a moment's consideration. You two create your distraction at Point Beta as arranged. I'll work my way around to the main entrance. When Blackthorne responds to your presence, I'll tail him back to his location. They made their way carefully down the slope, using the natural terrain for cover. Paralis remained invisible, maintaining his connection to Harry while avoiding detection. As they approached the perimeter wards, Harry felt the corrupted magic growing stronger, not just Blackthorne's presence, but something else. Something ancient and angry. The elementals, he whispered to Seraphina. I can sense them too. They're in pain. Her expression hardened. All the more reason to stop him. Point Beta turned out to be a ventilation shaft, wide enough for a person to descend but currently sealed with magical barriers. According to the scout's intelligence, it connected to a secondary tunnel system that ran parallel to the main excavation. This is where we part ways, Tonks said, her features already shifting to resemble one of the Death Eaters they'd observed on patrol. Remember, create your distraction, then get out. Don't try to be heroes. We know, Harry assured her. Once Tonks had moved away toward the main entrance, Harry turned to Seraphina. Ready? She nodded, a determined glint in her amber eyes. Let's remind Blackthorne why the enclave has been feared and respected for centuries. Together, they began dismantling the magical seals on the ventilation shaft. Not subtly or quietly, but with deliberate, powerful magical signatures that any decent ward system would detect immediately. They weren't trying to sneak in, they were announcing their presence. The wards responded predictably. Alarm spells activated throughout the complex, and Harry saw Death Eaters changing patrol patterns, converging on their location. Perfect. Now for Phase 2, Seraphina said with grim satisfaction. They descended into the shaft, using levitation charms to control their descent rather than climbing the rusty ladder attached to one wall. At the bottom, they found exactly what the scouts had reported, a narrow maintenance tunnel running roughly east-west, dimly lit by magical lights embedded in the ceiling. Which way? Seraphina asked. Harry closed his eyes briefly, focusing on the unsettling connection to Blackthorne. East. He's noticed the alarm but hasn't recognized it's us specifically yet. They moved swiftly through the tunnel, purposely leaving magical traces as they went, like laying a trail of breadcrumbs for Blackthorne to follow. The plan called for them to proceed approximately 200 meters, set magical charges designed to collapse the tunnel behind them, then use a secondary shaft to return to the surface where they'd activate their port keys. Simple. Efficient. Minimally dangerous if executed correctly. Of course, nothing ever went according to plan. They were halfway to their target point when the tunnel ahead suddenly filled with green flame, not a natural barrier but a deliberate magical construct. Harry skidded to a halt, Seraphina nearly colliding with him from behind. That's not supposed to be here, she hissed. Before Harry could respond, the flame parted to reveal a figure he recognized with a jolt of fear, not Blackthorne himself, but the traitor sage Morin. Well, Morin said, smiling coldly. The prodigies decide to join us after all. How convenient. Harry pushed Seraphina behind him, summoning his defensive fire shield. The tunnel's blocked. We need to go back. I'm afraid that's not an option, Morin replied, gesturing casually. The tunnel behind them filled with the same green flame, effectively trapping them. Blackthorne will be so pleased, Morin continued. He's been quite irritable since your escape. Keeps muttering about interrupted rituals and wasted potential. You betrayed the enclave, Seraphina said, her voice tight with anger. Helped him attack your own people. Morin shrugged. The enclave betrayed itself long ago, child. Hiding away our greatest magics, limiting our potential, all in the name of responsibility and balance. His face hardened. Kieran understands what I've always known, fire magic isn't meant to be contained. It's meant to consume, to transform. To rule. As he spoke, Harry felt a shift in the connection to Blackthorne, a sudden spike of awareness, then fierce, triumphant joy. He knows we're here, Harry warned Seraphina. He's coming. Morin smiled wider. Indeed he is. And he's quite eager to resume your interrupted ritual, Harry Potter. Though this time, I doubt you'll have a convenient rescue party arriving at the last moment. Harry's mind raced through their options. The tunnel was blocked in both directions. Their communication devices wouldn't work this deep underground. The portkeys required open space above to function properly. They were trapped. Or were they? Seraphina, he said quietly. Remember our trials demonstration? The synchronized groundbreaking? Her eyes widened slightly as she caught his meaning. The tunnel floor beneath them wasn't solid rock but packed earth, potentially vulnerable to their combined fire magic if applied correctly. Worth a try, she murmured. On 3? Harry nodded minutely. 1. Your whispered plotting is adorable, Morin mocked. But futile. The only way out is through me, and I assure you, 2. Seraphina continued. You lack both the power and experience to, 3. Harry shouted. They moved in perfect unison, dropping to their knees and slamming their palms against the tunnel floor. Their combined fire magic, Harry's raw power merged with Seraphina's precise control, surged downward, superheating the earth beneath them until it weakened and crumbled. Morin lunged forward, but too late. The floor collapsed, sending Harry and Seraphina plummeting into darkness as the traitor sage's enraged shouts faded above them. They fell perhaps 15 feet before hitting another tunnel below, landing hard but without serious injury thanks to hastily cast cushioning charms. Dust and debris rained down through the hole they'd created, temporarily obscuring vision. That was either brilliant or suicidal, Seraphina coughed, climbing to her feet. Maybe both, Harry admitted, checking himself for injuries. But it worked. He called to Pyralis through their bond, and the phoenix appeared beside them, looking ruffled but unharmed. Through their connection, Harry sensed the magical landscape around them. They dropped into a much older tunnel system, possibly predating the Muggle mining operation entirely. We need to move, Harry said urgently. Morin will alert Blackthorne to our exact position. They set off down the ancient tunnel, using Pyralis's natural glow for illumination. The passage twisted and branched repeatedly, forcing them to make educated guesses about which way might lead to the surface. All the while, Harry felt Blackthorne's presence growing closer through their unwanted connection, hunting them with single-minded determination. Wait, Seraphina said suddenly, stopping short. Do you feel that? Harry paused, extending his magical senses. Beyond Blackthorne's corrupted signature, he detected something else, a deep, primordial power pulsing through the very rock around them. The Fiendfyre vein, he whispered in awe. We're right next to it. Seraphina's expression shifted from concern to calculation. If Blackthorne's digging toward it from another direction, we could sabotage his efforts from this side, Harry finished her thought. Maybe even seal the vein completely. It was a significant deviation from their assigned role, but the opportunity seemed too valuable to ignore. If they could prevent Blackthorne from accessing the Fiendfyre reservoir, they'd accomplish the mission's primary objective regardless of what happened to the other teams. This way, Seraphina decided, following the magical current through a narrow side passage. The tunnel gradually widened as they proceeded, the walls changing from packed earth to natural stone that glowed with faint internal heat. The air grew warmer, drier, charged with magical potential that raised the hair on Harry's arms. Finally, they emerged into a large natural cavern that took their breath away. The ceiling soared 30 feet above, dotted with crystal formations that reflected and amplified the light emanating from the cavern's central feature, a flowing river of living fiendfyre, contained within natural stone banks like molten lava but infinitely more magical and aware. It's beautiful, Seraphina breathed. Harry nodded, momentarily stunned by the primal power before them. This wasn't the corrupted green fire Blackthorne wielded, but the pure, original fiendfyre that had drawn the Enclave's founders to these mountains centuries ago. Their awe was short-lived. On the opposite side of the cavern, they spotted the telltale signs of recent excavation, magical drill marks in the stone, support beams reinforced with spellwork, and equipment arranged for further digging. Blackthornne's team, Harry said. They must have reached this chamber from the main mine shaft. And they're preparing to tap directly into the Fiendfyre vein, Seraphina added grimly. Look at those containment vessels. She pointed to a series of large crystal containers positioned near the excavation site, clearly designed to capture and transport the living fire. We need to stop this, Harry decided. Collapse the entire chamber if necessary. That would require more power than the two of us can generate, Seraphina cautioned. Even at full strength, which we're not. Harry's gaze returned to the Fiendfyre river. Maybe we don't need to generate the power ourselves. Maybe we can borrow it. Seraphina followed his line of thought. Direct the Fiendfyre against Blackthornne's equipment. That's incredibly dangerous, Harry. Natural Fiendfyre is semi-sentient, it doesn't respond well to control. Not control, Harry corrected. Guidance. Like Paralysis, we don't command him, we work with him. As if acknowledging the comparison, Paralysis trilled softly from Harry's shoulder. The phoenix's presence seemed to attract the attention of the Fiendfyre river, causing ripples to form along its glowing surface. We don't have much time, Harry added, feeling Blackthornne growing ever closer through their connection. We either try this now or retreat. After a moment's hesitation, Seraphina nodded. Let's do it. But we approached together, synchronized like in training. They moved carefully to the edge of the Fiendfyre river, feeling its intense heat even from several feet away. Following enclave protocols for communing with elemental forces, they knelt in unison, extending their hands palm down above the living flame. We come with respect, Harry began the traditional invocation. We seek harmony, not mastery, Seraphina continued. We ask guidance, not servitude, they finished together. The Fiendfyre responded immediately, rising from its channel to form a towering pillar before them. Unlike normal fire that simply consumed, this ancient magic examined them with clear intelligence, tendrils of flame reaching out to taste their magical signatures. Harry felt it probe the phoenix bond, then recoil slightly at the damaged connection to Blackthornne. Seraphina gasped beside him as it similarly examined her, lingering on her familial connection to Sage Flameheart. Then, to their amazement, the Fiendfyre separated into two distinct columns, one crimson and gold that mirrored Paralys's coloring, the other a brilliant white-hot blue that matched Seraphina's magical signature. It recognizes us, Seraphina whispered in awe. And it's offering alliance, Harry added, sensing the elemental's intent. But only if we're worthy. The test came swiftly. Both columns of Fiendfyre surged forward, engulfing Harry and Seraphina completely. Unlike Blackthornne's corrupted fire, this didn't burn or consume, it evaluated, searching their intentions, their capacity for responsibility, their understanding of fire's dual nature as creator and destroyer. Harry opened himself fully to the experience, sharing memories of his training, his bond with Paralysis, even his near-death experience at Blackthornne's hands. Beside him, he sensed Seraphina doing the same, revealing her family heritage as fire guardians, her commitment to the Enclave's principles, her determination to stop Blackthornne's perversion of their sacred magic. The examination seemed to last both an eternity and a heartbeat. When the fire finally receded, Harry felt changed, not physically, but magically, as though the Fiendfyre had recognized something in him worth partnering with. I think it worked, he said, looking up to see the two columns of Fiendfyre waiting expectantly. Now comes the hard part, Seraphina replied. Directing it without controlling it. They stood together, facing the excavation site across the cavern. Through clear intent rather than forced commands, they shared their purpose with the Fiendfyre, the threat Blackthornne posed, the corruption he would bring, the necessity of stopping his access to this sacred power. The elemental fire understood immediately. With a roar that shook the cavern, it surged forward, dividing into dozens of serpentine streams that targeted Blackthornne's equipment with frightening precision. Crystal containment vessels shattered, support beams disintegrated, and the carefully excavated access tunnel began collapsing inward. The destruction was magnificent and terrifying, raw elemental power responding not to control but to righteous purpose. Harry and Seraphina watched in awe as the Fiendfyre methodically sealed every potential access point to the cavern, leaving only the natural tunnel through which they'd entered. It's protecting itself, Seraphina realized. Using us as catalysts, but making its own decisions. Harry nodded, feeling the wisdom in the elemental's actions. It's ensuring Blackthorne can't. A blast of corrupted green fire interrupted him, striking the stone floor between them and throwing them both backward. Harry rolled to his feet, instinctively raising a shield as more green flames poured into the cavern from the tunnel entrance. "Impressive," came Kieran Blackthorne's voice as he stepped into view. "I knew you had potential, Potter, but communing with wild Fiendfyre. That's beyond even most enclave masters." He looked more haggard than during their last encounter, his scarred face gaunt with exhaustion and his robes singed in places. But the corrupted fire surrounding him burned as strong as ever, and his eyes gleamed with the same fanatical intensity. "You're too late, Blackthorne," Harry called, moving to position himself between the dark wizard and Seraphina, who was still regaining her feet. "The vein is sealed. You can't access it." Blackthorne laughed, a hollow, unsettling sound that echoed through the cavern. "You think I don't see what's happened here? The Fiendfyre has chosen you, just as the Phoenix did. All the more reason why your power should be mine." He gestured, and Death Eaters began filing into the cavern behind him, at least a dozen, wands ready. Among them, Harry recognized the traitor Sage Morin, looking somewhat singed but wearing a vindictive smile. "No heroic rescue this time," Blackthorne continued. "Your diversion failed spectacularly. Dumbledore and his order are currently occupied with my elemental guardians, while your precious master Ignatius deals with a rather nasty trap in what he believed was my ritual chamber." Cold dread washed over Harry. Had the entire mission been compromised? Was this all an elaborate counter-trap? Paralis appeared suddenly above Harry, screeching defiance at Blackthorne. The Phoenix's presence bolstered Harry's courage, their bond flowing with shared determination despite the desperate situation. "You have two choices," Blackthorne said, his tone almost conversational. "Surrender willingly for the ritual, or watch me kill the girl before taking you by force. Either way, your power becomes mine." "There's a third option," Seraphina said, stepping up beside Harry. "We stop you here and now." She nodded almost imperceptibly toward the Fiendfyre river behind them, still churning with agitation after sealing the excavation site, clearly disturbed by Blackthorne's corrupted presence in its sacred cavern. Harry understood her intent immediately. It was desperately dangerous, but potentially their only chance. "You can't defeat all of us," Blackthorne scoffed. "Even with your Phoenix." "We don't have to," Harry replied, reaching for Seraphina's hand. "We just need to ask for help from the right source." Before Blackthorne could react, they turned in unison toward the Fiendfyre river, hands outstretched in supplication rather than command. Through their earlier communion, the elemental recognized them instantly, and more importantly, recognized the corruption threatening its domain. The response was immediate and overwhelming. The entire river surged upward, forming not a pillar but a tidal wave of living fire that roared toward Blackthorne and his followers. "Shields!" Blackthorne shouted, his corrupted green fire rising to counter the elemental attack. For a moment, the two forces collided in spectacular fashion, natural Fiendfyre against Blackthorne's corrupted version. The cavern filled with blinding light and deafening noise as primordial magic battled dark innovation. Under cover of this chaos, Harry pulled Seraphina toward the tunnel entrance. "We need to get out while they're distracted." But Blackthorne wasn't so easily defeated. Even as his followers panicked around him, he maintained enough control to notice Harry's escape attempt. With a snarl of rage, he redirected part of his defensive shield into a whip of green fire that lashed out, catching Seraphina across the back. She cried out, stumbling forward as the corrupted fire began spreading across her robes. Harry caught her before she fell, horror filling him as he saw the same sickly green corruption that had nearly claimed his own life now attacking hers. "Go," she gasped, pushing him away. "Get help. I'll slow you down." "Not happening," Harry said firmly, supporting her weight. "We leave together or not at all." Blackthorne advanced through the magical maelstrom, his corrupted shield holding back the natural Fiendfyre through sheer force of will and dark magic. "Touching loyalty," he sneered. "But futile." Harry knew they couldn't outrun Blackthorne in their current state. Seraphina was rapidly weakening from the corruption, and his own magic was depleted from communing with the Fiendfyre. Their portkeys wouldn't activate within the cavern's magical interference, and Pyralis was too exhausted for another flame travel. They were cornered, with only one desperate option remaining. "I'm sorry," Harry whispered to Seraphina. Then, to Blackthorne, "Stop the corruption spreading through her, and I'll go with you willingly." "Harry, no." Seraphina protested weakly. Blackthorne paused, considering the offer. "A noble sacrifice. But how do I know you won't resist once she's safe?" "Because I understand now," Harry said, improvising desperately. "The connection between us, it's more than just the ritual. You've shown me what true fire mastery looks like. Power without arbitrary restrictions, just as you said." He was gambling everything on Blackthorne's ego, his desperate need for validation, for recognition of his twisted genius. It was the Dark Wizard's greatest weakness, and Harry's only chance. Blackthorne smiled, clearly pleased by what he perceived as Harry's submission. "I knew you would see eventually." The boy raised by phoenixes, recognizing his true potential at last. With a casual gesture, he halted the corruption spreading through Seraphina. She gasped as the pain receded, though the damage already done remained. "Now come to me, Harry Potter," Blackthorne commanded, extending his hand. "Embrace your destiny." Harry helped Seraphina sit against the cavern wall, squeezing her hand reassuringly before stepping toward Blackthorne. Pyralis shrieked in protest overhead, but Harry silently urged the phoenix to trust him. Every step closer to Blackthorne strengthened their unwanted connection, the hollow feeling in Harry's chest expanding until it threatened to consume him. But within that violation, Harry sensed opportunity, a channel flowing both ways, just as Dumbledore had suggested. Blackthorne's smile widened as Harry approached. "You feel it, don't you? Our connection. Soon it will be complete, and together we will revolutionize fire magic itself." Harry stopped just beyond arm's reach. "I have one question first." "Ask," Blackthorne permitted magnanimously. "The corrupted fire, how do you control it without being consumed yourself?" Pride gleamed in Blackthorne's eyes, the pride of a master asked to explain his greatest innovation. "The secret is balance, ironically enough. One must become a perfect conductor, neither resisting the corruption nor surrendering to it entirely. Direct it like a river, channeling its power while maintaining separation." As Blackthorne spoke, Harry carefully adjusted his own magical defenses, preparing for what he intended, the most dangerous magical gambit he'd ever attempted. "Allow me to demonstrate," Blackthorne continued, summoning a concentrated ball of corrupted Fiendfyre to his palm. "This would consume an ordinary wizard from within. But I have mastered the balance between." Harry moved with explosive suddenness, lunging forward to grab Blackthorne's wrist with both hands. But instead of trying to force the corruption away, he did exactly the opposite. He opened himself completely to it, drawing it into his own magical core like a lightning rod attracts electricity. Blackthorne realized the trap too late. "No. You fool. What are you?" The corrupted Fiendfyre surged from Blackthorne into Harry, following the channel their connected magics created. But unlike before, when it had attacked Harry as foreign invasion, this time he invited it in deliberately, a Trojan horse strategy born of desperate inspiration. Pain beyond imagining flooded Harry's body as the corruption entered him. He heard Seraphina scream his name, felt Pyralis's panic through their bond, but remained focused on his desperate plan. Using the connection Blackthorne had created during the ritual, Harry wasn't just accepting the corruption, he was pulling it from its source, draining it from Blackthorne himself. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, they stood locked together, Harry grimly determined, Blackthorne increasingly frantic as he felt his carefully cultivated power being siphoned away. "Release me!" Blackthorne commanded, trying to break Harry's grip. "You can't contain it. It will consume you entirely." He was right. Already Harry felt the corruption spreading through his magical pathways, seeking to transform him as it had transformed Blackthorne. But consumption wasn't Harry's goal. Purification was. With the last of his conscious control, Harry reached for the one force that could counter Blackthorne's corruption, his phoenix bond. Though damaged, the connection to Paralis remained his core strength, his magical foundation. Paralis understood instantly. The phoenix dived toward them, landing on Harry's shoulder and adding his own magic to the equation. Pure phoenix fire met corrupted Fiendfyre within Harry's magical core, creating a crucible of opposing forces. The cavern filled with blinding light as the transformation began. Harry's body became the battlefield where corruption fought purification, dark innovation against natural harmony. Every nerve ending screamed in protest as his very essence was pulled between opposing magical poles. Blackthorne, still connected, experienced the conflict firsthand. "Stop," he begged, his arrogance replaced by genuine terror. "You'll destroy us both." "Maybe," Harry gasped through clenched teeth. "Or maybe just the corruption." The balance tipped. Phoenix fire, reinforced by Harry's communion with the natural Fiendfyre, gained ascendancy over Blackthorne's corruption. The purification spread back through their connection, reversing the flow, no longer from Blackthorne to Harry, but from Harry to Blackthorne. The dark wizard screamed as his own innovation turned against him, his carefully cultivated corruption meeting elemental purification it couldn't withstand. Green flame turned golden, then white-hot, as the cleansing fire spread throughout his magical system. With a final, desperate effort, Blackthorne tore himself free of Harry's grip, breaking the connection between them. He staggered backward, his body smoking, his scarred face contorted in agony and disbelief. "What have you done?" he whispered, staring at his hands where corrupted fire no longer danced. Harry collapsed to his knees, utterly spent. Restored balance, he managed, though the words barely carried beyond his lips. Around them, the cavern had transformed. The natural Fiendfyre river had calmed, returning to its channel but maintaining a watchful presence. The Death Eaters, seeing their leader's power broken, were retreating in disarray, some disappearing into the tunnels while others surrendered to figures now appearing at the cavern entrance, Dumbledore, Ignatius, and the Order members, battered but victorious from their own battles. Blackthorne looked from his useless hands to the approaching reinforcements, then to Harry kneeling before him, broken in body but triumphant in spirit. With a howl of rage and despair, he turned and fled toward a small side tunnel that hadn't been sealed by the Fiendfyre's earlier actions. Ignatius moved to pursue, but Dumbledore held him back. "Let him go. Without his corrupted power, he poses little immediate threat. And Harry needs us now." Indeed, Harry was fading fast. The purification had countered Blackthorne's corruption, but at tremendous cost to his already weakened system. Darkness closed in around his vision as Ignatius reached him, concerned face swimming in and out of focus. "Seraphina," Harry managed to say. "Help her first." "Blackthorne, corrupted fire." "She's being tended to," Ignatius assured him. "Rest now, Harry. You've done enough." As consciousness slipped away, Harry felt Paralis settle against his chest, the phoenix's healing tears falling freely. The last thing he saw was Seraphina being helped to his side, her amber eyes filled with tears and fierce pride as she reached for his hand. Then darkness claimed him completely. Harry's recovery took weeks rather than days this time. The damage from absorbing and purifying Blackthorne's corruption reached deeper than physical injury. It had altered his magical pathways, requiring careful healing and rehabilitation. He woke in the enclave's intensive care ward, finding himself in a bed adjacent to Sage Flameheart's. The symmetry wasn't lost on him, both victims of Blackthornne's corruption, both fighting long battles to reclaim their magic and health. Seraphina divided her time between them, reading aloud from enclave histories to her father and arguing fiercely with Harry whenever he tried to rush his recovery process. "You nearly died," she reminded him during one such argument, her normally composed exterior cracking to reveal genuine fear. "Again. So maybe listen to the healers who say, rest, instead of trying to practice fire summoning when you think no one's looking." Harry had the grace to look sheepish. "I need to know if my magic still works properly." "It works," she said firmly. "Just differently. Like everything else after what happened." She was right about that. Everything had changed following the confrontation in the Fiendfyre cavern. The Enclave Council, recognizing the ongoing threat from remaining Death Eaters and the possibility of Blackthornne's return, had voted to implement a partial evacuation, relocating younger students and non-essential personnel to a secondary location while maintaining a defensive presence in the mountains. The Fiendfyre River, having chosen Harry and Seraphina as worthy allies, had altered its flow patterns to better protect itself, making access nearly impossible for anyone without their specific magical signatures. The elemental had essentially appointed them its guardians, an unprecedented honor and responsibility. And most significantly for Harry personally, his magic had indeed changed. The purification process had burned away not just Blackthornne's corruption but some of the artificial constraints in Harry's own magical core, limitations unknowingly self-imposed during his early training. "Your natural affinity for fire magic has been enhanced," Dumbledore explained during one of his regular visits. "But more importantly, the rigid channels through which you previously accessed that magic have been, shall we say, remodeled." "Meaning what, exactly?" Harry asked. "Meaning your approach to magic will need to evolve," the headmaster replied. "Less structured technique, more intuitive flow. Rather like the difference between reciting a memorized poem and composing one spontaneously." This new reality became clearer as Harry's strength returned and he began tentative magical exercises under Ignatius's supervision. Where before his fire magic had responded best to precise mental commands and specific visualizations, now it flowed more naturally from emotion and intent, requiring less mechanical control but more inner discipline. Like working with paralysis, Harry realized during one session. Not controlling, but partnering. His phoenix, fully recovered and never far from Harry's side, trilled agreement. Their bond had actually strengthened through the ordeal, the damage from Blackthornne's ritual healed by their shared struggle against the corruption. By the time summer approached, bringing Harry's 9th birthday with it, his recovery had progressed enough for limited participation in enclave activities. He wasn't back to full strength, but the hollow feeling had finally disappeared, replaced by a different sensation, a deeper connection to his magic that felt simultaneously more powerful and more natural. On a warm evening in late July, he found Seraphina in their favorite alcove overlooking the valley below. The view had changed, increased security measures meant fewer opportunities to observe the outside world, but the sense of peaceful isolation remained. "Father spoke today," she said without preamble as he settled beside her. "Just a few words, but the healers say it's significant progress." Harry smiled, genuinely pleased. "That's brilliant, Sarah. What did he say?" "He asked for you, actually." A mix of emotions crossed her face, amusement, exasperation, perhaps a touch of jealousy. Wanted to know if that reckless Potter boy had fully recovered from his stupidly heroic stunt. Harry laughed. "Sounds like he's definitely getting better. The healers think the purification you performed on Blackthornne somehow weakened the corruption in other victims too," she explained. "Like the magical equivalent of a vaccinated person helping protect their community." They sat in companionable silence for a while, watching eagles circle lazily above the valley. Eventually, Seraphina spoke again, her voice more hesitant than usual. "The council offered me special dispensation today. To accompany you to Hogwarts when you turn 11. As part of our agreement with Dumbledore." Harry turned to her in surprise. "That's 2 years early. You'd normally start at 13. She nodded. Special circumstances. Our connection to the Fiendfyre River, the events with Blackthornne, my father's condition, and perhaps a bit of political maneuvering by Dumbledore. Will you accept? Harry asked, trying to keep his tone neutral despite the hope surging through him. I haven't decided, she admitted. Part of me wants to stay here, continue traditional training, be near my father. She hesitated. But another part thinks maybe we're meant to face whatever comes next together. Like with Blackthornne. For what it's worth, Harry said carefully, having you at Hogwarts would make it feel more like having a piece of home with me. She studied him thoughtfully. Home. Is that what the enclave is to you now? Even after everything? Yes, Harry said without hesitation. The first real home I've ever known. He smiled slightly. Though I suppose soon I'll have two homes. Like having two families. The boy who lived and the Phoenix child, Seraphina mused. Straddling magical worlds. The Phoenix in question chose that moment to appear, circling once before landing on the stone railing before them. Paralis fixed them both with an inscrutable bird stare, then deliberately extended one wing to brush against Seraphina's hand. I think he's voting for you to come to Hogwarts, Harry interpreted, grinning. Well, if the Phoenix insists, she said dryly, though her fingers gently stroked the offered feathers. Someone has to keep you from getting yourself killed attempting impossibly heroic feats. So you'll come? She sighed with exaggerated resignation. I suppose I must. For the greater good of the wizarding world and whatnot. Harry's smile widened. Admit it, you're curious about Hogwarts. All those new magics to learn, new people to impress, new competitions to win. Maybe, she allowed, a competitive gleam entering her eyes. Though I expect I'll still beat you in every class. We'll see about that, Harry challenged. As they continued their good-natured bickering, Paralis watched with apparent satisfaction. Through their bond, Harry sensed the Phoenix's contentment, not just with Harry's recovery or their strengthened connection, but with the path unfolding before them. Much remained uncertain. Blackthornne was still at large, though severely weakened. The Death Eaters who escaped would doubtless report to their master, potentially accelerating Voldemort's plans to return. The prophecy still loomed in Harry's future, unavoidable and ominous. Yet in this moment, watching the sunset with his Phoenix on one side and Seraphina on the other, Harry felt something he'd spent most of his young life without, hope. Not blind optimism that everything would work out perfectly, but the grounded confidence that whatever challenges came, he wouldn't face them alone. For years ago, a Phoenix had chosen a neglected boy and brought him to the Fiendfyre Mountains. That impossible moment of grace had transformed Harry from unwanted burden to cherished apprentice, from victim of circumstance to master of his own destiny. Between his two worlds, Enclave and Hogwarts, Fiendfyre and wizarding magic, chosen family and prophesied role, Harry Potter would forge his own path forward. Not as a weapon or a symbol or a savior, but as himself, a young wizard with extraordinary gifts and the courage to use them wisely. Paralis trilled softly, as if confirming these thoughts. Seraphina bumped Harry's shoulder companionably. And for the first time since waking in the healing chambers, Harry felt completely, undeniably whole. Whatever came next, he was ready. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.